The eternal heaven god emperor stands revealed, and the dragon monarch's presence stills the conferred god stage. As Xianxia's unexpected return shocks the eastern divine region, a threat from beyond the primal chaos looms. Leave a like and subscribe to walk this path. Emperor, with the start of the second round of the preliminaries, the eternal heaven god realm no longer remained calm. All the experts of the eastern divine region who were invited to spectate left their residences and flew towards the same place. This was the center of the eternal heaven god realm, the eternal heaven city, the place where the eternal divine emperor and the guardians were located, the sacred ground that everyone knew. The eternal heaven divine tower that was 30,000 miles across the sky was located in the center of the eternal heaven city, and below it was the most sacred object in the entire eternal heaven god realm, the eternal heaven pearl. On the side of the eternal heaven divine tower was a seal god arena that ran 300 miles in diameter. This was because those who were able to seize the championship on the arena would absolutely have the qualifications to be a god. This seal god arena was also the final battlefield for the Profound God Convention. This time, the Profound God Convention would similarly decide after 3 rounds of preselection to break out of the 32 of Seal God, and then conduct the final battle of Seal God on this Seal God arena. The Seal God arena was surrounded by an incomparably enormous viewing gallery. Although the spectating seats were huge, they were always empty. Because it was an honor to be a spectator in the entire eternal heaven god realm, there was no single one in 100 million people. This day, the Seal God Arena, which had been quiet for a long time, had welcomed the busiest day for hundreds of years. A large number of figures flew over from different directions. Their cultivations were both astonishing, but they hid their profound aura in the eternal heaven city. Even their flying speed was exceptionally slow. When they arrived at the spectating seats of the Seal God Arena, these people carefully descended into the seats. Of course, their seats' arrangement weren't casual, but rather harsh. Each of the seats held an eye-catching profound light. In the profound light, the names of different star realms were engraved. The visitors of the same star realm were all concentrated in one place, and there were no interlacing. As for the upper star realms, the middle star realms, and the inferior star realms, the seats were separated, clearly distinct. The star realm that invited to watch the battle. There were at most 3,000 people in the upper star realms, with a total of 500 people in the middle star realms, while the inferior star realms had a maximum of 100. As for the king realms, it could bring as much as it wanted. The northern part was the upper star realms, the south was the middle star realms, and the wheat was the inferior star realms. As for the east, it belonged to the 4 king realms. When the profound practitioners arrived, all of them carefully walked past the east wing, not to mention passing over them, not daring to even close in. This clearly showed the absolute power and deterrence of the king realm. More and more people flew in, and the other 3 Patasoff seats were no longer empty. The invitations of the eternal heaven realm were always exceptionally stingy. All of the participants in the upper star realms had a limits of 140,000 people. The number of mid-star realms was several times that of the upper star realms, but the number of people was barely worth 1 million. The number of inferior star realms was the biggest, but the number of invited was the least. However, there was no doubt that anyone who could come here was a character on the highest level of their star realm, a realm king, a tyrant, or a respected one. However, those who were proud of the world in their own star realm were all cautious. They restrained their aura. The experts of the Seal God Arena had gathered, but they were all silent. The king realms had yet to arrive, and no one was complaining. After a while, all the seats that were engraved with profound light were filled. All of the star realms were on time. They finally began to get lively. They greeted each other, or tested each other. If the king realms were not to arrive, the upper star realms would naturally be supreme. The upper star realms of the northern section looked at the south and west seats with a proud expression. The inferior star realms were undoubtedly the most cautious. However, they didn't feel any resentment. Feixu and the rest should have returned to the Snow Song realm, Mu Huanji casually said. Judging from his words, he wasn't in a bad mood. The final preliminaries ranking of Mu Feixu was at 500,000 points. This was greatly beyond his expectations, so he was naturally very happy. It's probably Yunqi, maybe he'll stay. Mu Bingyun said with worry. Yes, why? Mu Huanji frowned. He's always wanted to be able to enter the eternal heaven god realm. This is his main purpose in participating in the profound god convention. He didn't expect that he would be directly repulsed after elimination. He shouldn't be willing to accept this. Mu Bingyun said, regretting that she didn't choose to bring him into the eternal heaven god realm. There's no other way. Who dares to disobey the rules of the eternal heaven god realm? Mu Huanji's voice became suspicious. You've been anxious all this time because of this matter. Mu Bingyun shook her head and did not say anything. She was sure that with Yun Qi's temperament, he would absolutely not be willing to accept it easily. She was worried that he would act impulsively. He hoped that he could accept it for the time being, and there was always a way. Mu Bingyun sighed and thought. Yun Qi had killed Wu Geik at the last moment. His name had soared in the previous month. His soul orb had always been 0. It was obvious that he couldn't even enter the battlefield, so naturally, Mu Bingyun and the others would not inquire about his accomplishments. The second round of the preliminaries has already been going on for a long time. For the places in the 1,000 heaven-selected children, it'll be very tragic. Mu Huanji said, It's a pity that there's no star tablet here and I can't see anything on the situation. Haha, it has nothing to do with us. Mu Tanjai smiled mockingly. Sect Master Huo, Eternal Heaven Realm's voice transmission is related to the future of the Eastern Divine Region. Have you heard anything? Mu Huanji asked Huo rudely. The Snow Song Realm and the Flame God Realm seated side by side, and all of the Flame God Realm had a ruddy complexion and a strange light in their eyes. Even Yan Juhai, who had the most stable temperament, was still smiling. As for Huo Ruli, his mouth was wide open, and he hadn't closed it from the beginning. If a passerby saw this, they wouldn't believe that he was the leader of a middle star realm. It would be great if they didn't think of him as a mental illness. He hadn't heard anything from Mu Huanji and still smiled foolishly. His gaze reached the people in the upper star realms opposite him. Not only did he not retreat, but instead held his head high. His disciple had entered the top 100 of the Eastern Divine Region in the first selection. Hit at least 80% of you upper star realms, and I will be afraid of you. Yan Juhai looked at Huo Ruli and smiled, replied for him, We don't have any news, but we should know about it soon. Mu Huanji nodded and cupped his hands toward Yan Juhai. Congratulations again. This was different from the previous profound God convention, the changes in the eternal heaven realm, and some of the rumors that had started a long time ago. Everyone present had a vague idea of the major event mentioned by the eternal heaven realm. After a long while, 3 figures suddenly appeared in the sky, flying towards the Seal God arena. Several low calls immediately sounded as they approached. It's the 3 elders of Heavenly Mystery Realm. They were all 3 elderly men with white hair and white whiskers, all wearing the same jade robes. The 3 old men were the 3 elders of Heavenly Mystery Realm who were famous in the Eastern Divine Region, the most senior of the Heavenly Mystery Realm. Mo Yu, don't say. Mo Wen, don't ask. Mo Zhai, don't know. The Heavenly Mystery Realm has finally arrived, and it seems like just 3 people. Mu Tanjai said, Heh, the 3 elders of Heavenly Mystery Realm have arrived. Isn't that enough? Mu Huanji laughed. The 3 old men arrived above the Seal God arena, nodded to everyone, and then sat in the east seat under everyone's astonished gaze. East seats! It's the seats! All the experts looked at each other in confusion. Although the Heavenly Mystery Realm had a special status in the upper star realm, especially the 3 elders, and the 4 realm kings had a high regard for them. But the eastern seats of the Seal God arena had always been the exclusive use of the king realms, and there had never been any exceptions. This time it was actually allowing the Heavenly Mystery Realm to take its seats. Looks like this major event must have something to do with the Heavenly Mystery Realm. Yan Juhai's voice rang out. When he thought of the rumor, he fell into deep thought. Huo Ruli suddenly said, I heard that the 3 elders had broken their lives to less than 100 years because of disobedience and overestimating of the heavenly mystery. Previously, I thought that it was a fallacy. Now looking at their state, feeling that the 3 elders' auras were clearly abnormal, Huo Ruli nodded slowly. It seems to be real. When the 3 elders of Heavenly Mystery Realm arrived, they all sat in silence with their eyes closed, not speaking a single word like 3 dead trees. An hour passed and the wind suddenly stopped. The clouds that had been moving in the wind were all still. They were like ripples in the water, and a gentle breeze blew from the air. In that instant, the entire Seal God arena became quiet, and all sounds seemed to be swallowed up into space. In the next instant, Everyone stood up in all directions, and the young, profound practitioners who were stunned were all brought up at the fastest speed. "Hee, I have come late. You have been waiting for a long time." An old man appeared in the rolling clouds. He was wearing a simple gray suit, and he was smiling like a gentle breeze. It was an extremely ordinary and gentle old man, but the overlords of the Eastern Divine Region look up to him with admiration. They bowed. "Greetings, Eternal Heaven Divine Emperor!" The cheers were incomparably loud, and without any profound aura, they shook the heavens, shaking the hearts of those accompanying young practitioners. The Eternal Heaven Divine Emperor. He was one of the realm kings of the 4 king realms, the supreme ruler of the Eternal Heaven God realm, a legendary. They had been looking forward to this day for a long time, but when the legend appeared in their sight, they felt an overwhelming sense of illusory reality. They couldn't believe that they had actually seen this person who existed only in myth. There were over 1,000 people behind the Eternal Heaven Divine Emperor. Even those realm kings of the upper star realms didn't dare to look directly. This was because they were the guardians and arbiters of the Eternal Heaven God realm. The arbiters was the special existence that the Eternal Heaven God realm used them to punish the people or star realms who had made great and evil mistakes. The guardians were far less than the arbiters, but their positions in the Eternal Heaven God realm and the Eastern Divine Region were equivalent to the star god of the star god realm and the moon god of the moon god realm. Any one of them was a terrifying powerhouse that even the realm kings of the upper star realms would bent over, and was the strongest strength and the most important foundation in the Eternal Heaven God realm, except the Eternal Heaven Pearl. All of you have traveled far, waiting for another month for a long time. It's very hard, but please sit down. There's no need to be so polite. The Eternal Heaven Divine Emperor landed lightly on the east seat. He smiled and raised his hand, and his expression didn't contain the slightest trace of arrogancy. His pair of eyes that appeared to be old were deep and clear like a puff of water. Emperor with his guardians and adjudicators, the atmosphere of the conferred God stage thoroughly solidified. No one dared to make even a peep, and all eyes were locked onto the Eternal Heaven God Emperor. As one of the 4 great emperors of the Eastern Divine Region, someone at the highest echelons of the Primal Chaos, he ought to oppress the entire world with his might, and his imposingness should have been godlike. However, no matter which way they looked at him, everyone present simply saw a good-natured old man who couldn't be any more ordinary in terms of temperament and appearance. If they saw him on the streets, they definitely wouldn't take a second glance and would have easily forgotten about him. What was washing away one's magnificence and returning to a natural and perfect state? Perhaps that could be best exemplified by the Eternal Heaven God Emperor. Although the Eternal Heaven God Emperor was not the strongest among the Eastern Divine Region's 4 great emperors, he was nevertheless the most respected. The Eternal Heaven Ancestor had been recognized by the Eternal Heaven Pearl as its master, and even after his death it still protected the Eternal Heaven God realm for many generations. Of course, one of the foremost reasons behind this is the fact that the Eternal Heaven God realm had always trod the righteous path. In the countless years of the Eternal Heaven realm's existence, its adjudicators had punished numerous criminals within the God realm, saving a vast number of star realms. It was unknown how many generations of people had revered them in gratitude. If there was only one holy land in the Eastern Divine Region, it would undoubtedly be the Eternal Heaven realm. If the other king realms, Brahma Monarch God realm, Star God realm, and the Moon God realm, became someone's enemy, the Eastern Divine Region would only come to see the festivity while avoiding them to the best of their abilities. However, if anyone were to dare go against the Eternal Heaven God realm, they would certainly infuriate the public. It was no different than defying a natural law. As such, the conferred God stage was quiet. The reason behind it all was not because they feared the Eternal Heaven God Emperor, but because they respected him greatly. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor raised his head and smiled. "Since our esteemed guests have already arrived, please show yourselves." "Ha ha ha ha!" At the descent of his voice, hearty laughter reverberated through space. Amidst the laughter, wind surged as an extremely bright beam of starlight dazzled everyone as it shot over, as though a star had descended. HMPH? At another side, a cold snort had also sounded at the same time. The firmament seemed to have been split open as a pure beam of light which wasn't as glaring sprinkled down, resembling a white moon in the sky. The moon and star instantly swallowed up all the surrounding light, causing everything below the intersecting beams of light to dim. That's the star god realm and the moon god realm have arrived. A human figure slowly walked out of each individual beam of light. The one who came out of the star beam was tall, looked middle-aged. Although he wore a smile on his face, his eyes were like cold stars that none would dare directly gaze at. Ruler of the star god realm, one of the eastern divine region's 4 great emperors, the star god emperor. The one who walked out of the moon beam looked much younger. He was extraordinarily handsome, and his immortal looks incited endless reverence and a bit of warmth. Ruler of the moon god realm, one of the eastern divine region's 4 great emperors, the moon god emperor. The 2 god emperors appeared at the same time, clearly with the intent to compete against each other. Both realms always having been at odds with one another was also something everyone in the eastern divine region knew about. This was especially true due to the huge scandal that happened in the moon god realm 30 or so years ago. With the death of the star god realm's heavenly wolf, their relationship had become even more volatile. If this event didn't concern the future of the whole eastern divine region, and wasn't so important that the eternal heaven realm mediated between them, the 2 realms definitely would not be willing to be present at the same gathering, let alone in the same seating area. When the audience saw the moon god emperor, in addition to the feeling of reverence, they naturally would think back to that scandal. Back then, the fame of his marriage to Yue Wugu, who possessed the divine stainless body, was so great that it also caught the attention of those outside the eastern divine realm. But the greater the occasion, the greater the tragedy. Yue Wugu disappeared, and then she returned without her vital yin. As the stately moon god emperor, he had actually suffered a humiliation even the common man would find intolerable, becoming the laughingstock of the entire eastern divine region. Only a short 30-odd years had passed, so this was still fresh in everyone's memory. Yet even though only 30 or so years had passed, various great star realms had surprisingly received an invitation card to his grand wedding yet again. This time around, he had even broadened the scope of invited star realms, causing it to far surpass that of the past, while triggering endless speculation. Clearly written on the invitation card was the date of the moon god emperor's new wedding, which was right after the profound god convention. There were only 2 months between now and then, yet no one knew who his new wife was. With the descent of 2 more god emperors, the atmosphere on the conferred god stage froze even further. No one dared to take a deep breath. Although the profound god conventions of the past were always the eastern divine region's greatest occasions related to the profound way, since the 4 great king realms weren't allowed to participate, aside from the eternal heaven realm that had to host them. The other 3 king realms would typically send a few elders or palace masters who would bring a group of young disciples. Existences like star gods and moon gods were rarely seen, let alone the 3 god emperors. Now that 3 of the 4 god emperors had come, it was possible that the head of the 4 god emperors, the Brahma heaven god emperor, would also come. Today's event was certainly of great importance, far beyond what everyone thought it was originally. The audience members' hearts grew heavier as they became more excited. What kind of honor was it to be able to participate in this kind of event and personally witness the assembly of the 4 god emperors? Both the star god emperor and the moon god emperor greeted the eternal heaven god emperor at the same time, and then swiftly flew to their seats. They did not speak or even make the smallest of eye contact with each other, as though the other party didn't even exist. The beams of star and moon overhead still had yet to dissipate as a large number of silhouettes appeared, then separated, and quietly fell to sit in their seats. These people were similar to the eternal heaven god realm's guardians and adjudicators. Every one of them possessed a terrifying aura. If they were to glance over for a slight moment, one's entire body would most probably turn ice cold. Today, profound practitioners who have never seen members of the king realms were now aware of how frightening of an existence they truly were. It was not merely the 4 great emperors. It seemed as though anyone related to the words, king realm, were all incomprehensible monsters. The ones sitting next to and behind the star god emperor, could they be the legendary star gods? A senior Ice Phoenix disciple asked with a tremor in his voice. This was because when he had taken a casual glance over just a moment ago, he felt as though he had suddenly fallen into an abyss. It almost caused all the blood his body to flow backwards as he continuously shuddered. Yes, Mu Huanji nodded and lowered his voice as much as he could. Out of the 12 star gods and 12 moon gods, 4 have respectively come from each realm. This is completely unprecedented. No, with the Star God Emperor, 5 great star gods have come, Mu Bingyun corrected. The Star God Emperor was also one of the Star God realm's 12 star gods. He possessed the power of the heavenly chief star god, and since he was the Star God Emperor, he was naturally the strongest out of the 12 star gods. In the Eastern Divine region, the Star God realm's 12 star gods were absolutely equal to supreme existences like the true gods of the past. Rumors about them were spread across every corner of the Eastern Divine region, and every one of them were true legends. They were now right before them, causing all the top experts of their individual star realms to tremble inwardly in fright. None dared to look directly at them for long periods of time. However, Mu Bingyun's beautiful eyes were actually locked there for quite a while before she withdrew her gaze. She softly exclaimed, "The heavenly slaughter star god has yet to arrive." However, this wasn't important anymore. After all, Yun-Chi had already. "Oh, does Bingyun wish to see the legendary Princess Jasmine?" Mu Huanji laughed without any suspicions. "The heavenly slaughter star god has yet to arrive, but the heavenly poison star god has arrived." As expected of the 2 scariest star gods, they could make one feel fear with just a glance from afar. Mu Bingyun glanced at the heavenly poison star god Mu Huanji was referring to and immediately shifted her gaze right after. Arrogantly sitting behind the seat of the Star God Emperor was a tall woman in a dark green gauze skirt. However, it was half-transparent, and her charming body was faintly discernible. From her arms to her shoulders, the silk sleeves were completely transparent, showing off her jade arms and delicate skin. 2 large breasts stood tall, and only one layer of cloth bound them together, with more than half swaying and exposed. The deep valley created between the 2 mounds could cause one to drool in desire. On the lower part of her body was a shockingly short dark green skirt suffused with a serene light. The skirt barely covered the tops of her thighs, and her slender legs were almost bare to the world. They were slender and satiny, the light of her skin making it look like snow. It made one want to simply rush forth to hug and lick it. It was unknown how many gazes had fallen onto the body of that woman, as though they had been attracted by a magnet. Not able to shift their eyes away, all the blood in their bodies had been instantly set aflame. The lust went straight to their heads, and some were left dumbstruck with a drooling face, nearly forgetting that this was the conferring god stage. The crazy urge to recklessly charge forward, press her onto their bodies, and ruthlessly ravage her was invoked. That woman, however, didn't seem fazed at all. She allowed the foolish gazes of the public look at her uninhibited exposed body with a faint smile on her red lips. Just like a water hibiscus, her beautiful complexion was filled with a flirty charm. Once the gazes of the accompanying disciples from both the Snow Song realm and the Flame God realm landed on her, they all became stupefied and blushed, as if they had lost their hearts. However, a shout suddenly rang through their minds, "Don't look at her!" Atop the conferred god stage, numerous young, profound practitioners looked as though they had been struck by lightning as they turned their gazes away. They were overwhelmed with shock and didn't dare to take a second look at the woman in green. Master Shis. The head of a Phoenix sect disciple was filled with dripping sweat as he asked somewhat fearfully. "She is the heavenly poison star god," a Phoenix elder said in a low voice. What? Shis actually?" Various disciples from the Flame God realm shook in fear as they inhaled a long breath. This beauty who wore clothes even more revealing than a prostitute, who was more seductive than a devil, was actually one of the 2 scariest of star gods. The one rumored to have poisoned an entire star realm to death in the time of a smile, the heavenly poison demon nicknamed the Infernal Datura, Moonflower. Then that fairy, beside the heavenly poison star god, is also a star god, the same Phoenix disciple asked in a small voice. Moonflower lowered her head and casually played with her fingers, seemingly unconcerned about everything around her. However, she had not stolen all the radiance from the person beside her. On her right was a peerless woman that resembled a goddess from heaven. She was not as seductive as Moonflower, but her face was utter perfection and far surpassed Moonflower's. It was just that this beautiful face was always ice-cold, and her beautiful eyes looked on without emotion. She was as tall and slender as Moonflower, with black hair that reached to her waist, and was as quiet as a maiden. She was clad in a long pink skirt that added a bit of cuteness. Moonflower and this girl could be said to be a demon and an immortal. Many young, profound practitioners that gazed upon her felt as though a fairy had descended. She was so breathtaking that it would inevitably make them feel a sense of inferiority for having wild thoughts. Someone able to sit beside the heavenly poison star god is naturally another star god. Another phoenix elder suddenly laughed. However, he is not a fairy. He is the heavenly demon star god. Ah, the gazes of several phoenix disciples slackened as their throats became agitated. They were silent for a long while. Heavenly demon star god. Anyone who had heard of the stories of the 12 star gods knew that the heavenly demon star god, Rose, was a man. The heavenly demon star god has the strongest mental powers within the 12 star gods. As long as he wills it, he could easily turn you all into idiots. Do not randomly look lest you invite trouble. Yes, the Phoenix disciples all lowered their heads and no longer dared to look at the other star gods. They were increasingly well aware that those were beings they could never comprehend. The skinny one to the left of the heavenly poison star god is actually the one with the greatest physical strength out of the 12 star gods, the heavenly aster star god, Shenhu. The elderly man sitting next to the star god emperor is the heavenly origin star god, Tumi. He is the oldest amongst the 12 star gods at the age of 40,000. He is the star god realm's Weissman. Before the current star god emperor inherited the star god power, Tumi was his teacher in the profound way. As a result, the star god emperor has always respected him greatly, and he was the only star god with the qualifications to sit on the same level as the star god emperor. On the conferred god stage, many seniors introduced the star gods to their juniors via sound transmission or whisper. Unexpected guest, ha 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 ha, my apologies for arriving late, everyone. There was a loud, candid laugh as the blue sky literally parted in half to admit a tall, straight figure dressed in blue clothing. He had no facial hair, and his hair reached all the way to his waist. His appearance stifled the breaths of everyone in the conferred god stage. He might not have released any profound energy, but his mere presence struck fear in the people's hearts and souls all the same. They wanted nothing more than to kowtow before the man who was like a monarch. The eternal heaven god emperor, star god emperor, and moon god emperor stood up in unison. No one else in the entire eastern divine region had had the honor. He was the ruler of Brahma monarch god realm and head of the 4 god emperors of the eastern divine region. The Brahma heaven god emperor Thousand Leaves Brahma. Ho ho, eternal heaven is most honored to welcome you, Brahma heaven god emperor. This way, please. The eternal heaven god emperor smiled. Ha 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 ha, you're welcome, eternal heaven god emperor. How can I possibly miss such an important occasion? The Brahma heaven god emperor laughed loudly before bowing slightly towards the star god emperor and moon god emperor as a show of respect. Then he said to the moon god emperor, your wedding is in another 2 months, am I right? I'm very much looking forward to this, and I'm even more curious about identity of your future wife. I will definitely attend your wedding banquet. Haha, I feel very honored to hear this. The moon god emperor smiled in reply before looking behind his back. Oh, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not seeing your divine daughter. She's a naughty girl who has left me a long time ago to spread her wings. Even I don't know where she's having fun right now. She may do as she wishes, the Brahma heaven god emperor answered smilingly after he took his seat. Naturally, the divine daughter mentioned by the moon god emperor was a matter of great interest to everyone. The dragon queen and goddess were said to possess 3/5 of the beauty of the entire Primal Chaos realm. However, very, very few people in the entire god realm had the good fortune to meet them in person. The Dragon Queen was publicly known as the Realm King of the Dragon God Realm and the official wife of the Dragon Monarch, the #1 ruler of the Primal Chaos realm. She was also the Dragon Monarch's official wife. It was rumored that the Dragon Monarch was extremely protective of his wife and doted on her whenever he could, so there was no way he would ever allow mere mortals to witness her beauty. As for the goddess, she was the only daughter the Brahma Heaven God Emperor had out of so many children. Rumors say that she was so beautiful that countless venerable divine chosens were willing to throw themselves into madness and risk their lives just to win a smile from her. This included the deceased heavenly wolf star god. Therefore, the moon god emperor might very well have brought up the goddess on purpose. As a result, the star god emperor lost his smile and frowned for a very long time. The arrival of the Brahma heaven god emperor, eternal heaven god emperor, star god emperor, and moon god emperor all at the same time was undoubtedly dreamlike to the cultivators on the conferred god stage. They could almost forget that the young experts inside the eternal heaven pearl were battling furiously against one another right now. The Brahma Heaven God Emperor's gaze swept across the surroundings before he said, "I guess everyone is present already. Let us begin then." He had just finished saying this when his gaze suddenly turned. Beside him, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor had stood up and turned in the same direction, smiling. "It looks like we have an unexpected guest." The masses were just starting to wonder about the Eternal Heaven God Emperor's statement when a loud voice came from the southern part of the sky. Kang Shishan of the 10 Directions Deep Sea Realm announces his abrupt visit to the Eternal Heaven Realm. Wah! A commotion instantly erupted above the conferred God stage. Kang Shishan, is he that Kang Shishan, one of the 4 God Emperors of the Southern Divine Region? Every expert on the conferred God stage was shocked by this. Why is he here? Was he invited to discuss that important matter too? No, it looks like he came uninvited. Royal Father, where is this 10 Directions Deep Sea Realm? I've never heard about it until today. And who is this Kang Shishan? Why does everyone look so surprised? The 10 Directions Deep Sea Realm doesn't belong to the Eastern Divine Region. It is a star realm and one of the 4 king realms of the Southern Divine Region. You can say that it is the Eastern Divine Region to our Eternal Heaven Realm. Kang Shishan is the ruler of this 10 Directions Deep Sea Realm and one of the 4 God Emperors of the Southern Divine Region. Kang Shishan's name wasn't unfamiliar to the experts present in this place. After all, he was a God Emperor of a God realm. However, almost no one had ever seen him in person until today. After all, the Eastern Divine Region and Southern Divine Region were literally 2 different worlds, not to mention the various barriers that existed between them. The Star God Realm and Moon God Realm were practically hostile towards the King Realms of the Southern Divine Region. No one thought that Kang Shishan would suddenly show up. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor waved his arms and declared loudly, "The restrictions are down, so please come in, honored guest." The Eternal Heaven Realm normally maintained a restriction that prevented the entry of normal profound practitioners, but naturally it couldn't stop someone as powerful as a God Emperor. That being said, not even the uninvited guest Kang Shishan would dare break etiquette and force his way in through the Eternal Heaven restriction. Ha 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 ha! There was loud laughter and 2 faint flashes of light in the air. Then a person abruptly appeared on the sky of the conferred God stage, before bowing deeply towards the Eternal Heaven God Emperor. "Shishan humbly apologizes for showing up uninvited. Please forgive me if I have offended you." Kang Shishan was a tall, large man dressed in soft armor made from profound gold and an oddly shaped cape behind his back. His blue-gold hair was especially striking. Despite being the monarch of a king realm and a God Emperor of the Primal Chaos realm, Kang Shishan was shockingly wild. Even now, he looked as arrogant as ever even though he was in a foreign divine region. It was as if he could never, and would never change the way he carried himself. "Ho-ho, I wouldn't mind an honored guest like yourself appearing uninvited in Eternal Heaven Realm every day." The Eternal Heaven God Emperor chuckled. "Oh, have you come alone, God Emperor Shishan?" God Emperor Shishan hadn't brought anyone with him. No one could be detected outside the restriction either. "It is rude enough that I'd come uninvited. Naturally, I dare not impose on my host any more than this." God Emperor Shishan looked at the 4 God Emperors and smiled even wider. To think that all 4 God Emperors of the Eastern Divine Region would gather in one place. This is truly a rare occasion. I definitely made the right decision to come here. Hee. The Star God Emperor let out an odd-sounding sneer. "Kang Shishan, your cultivation hasn't grown since the last time we met, but your guts have become much bigger than before. Aren't you afraid that this might be the last place you see in your life?" "Oh no, you flatter me too much," Kang Shishan beamed. "I wouldn't know if my guts have gotten larger or not, but I can definitely tell you that I'm confident in my ability to exit this place alive." "HMPH?" The Star God Emperor and Moon God Emperor snorted coldly at the same time before looking away. For once, the Star God Emperor and Moon God Emperor shared the same opinion. "What does a personal grudge matter before something so important?" the Brahma Heaven God Emperor asked. "God Emperor Shishan, your sudden arrival is spurred by this matter too, right?" "Of course." God Emperor Shishan nodded. He was just about to speak when his expression suddenly changed. At almost the same time, the Brahma Heaven God Emperor, Star God Emperor, Moon God Emperor, and even the eternally calm Eternal Heaven God Emperor turned towards the west with shock in their eyes. A violent wind surged as clouds become scattered. The entire world suddenly dimmed a little as the blue sky sank rapidly as if it was about to be turned upside down. A voice came from a distant place. "This dragon of the west has come to pay a visit." Every word felt like a billion-ton steel plate that crushed downwards against their bodies and souls. They couldn't breathe and couldn't think. It was as if the entire world was overwhelmed by that one singular voice. This terrifying feeling didn't just happen to the weaker, younger, profound practitioners. Even the top-rate masters of star realms felt the exact same thing. Their shock was even greater than the younger, profound practitioners. In an instant, all 5 god emperors got up from their seats with solemn expressions on their faces. Even the eternally arrogant god emperor Shishin hid a trace of fear and respect behind his pupils. There was only one person in the entire God realm and Primal Chaos realm who could strike fear and respect in a God Emperor. He was the Dragon Monarch. The fact that all 5 God Emperors had risen into the air caused everyone in the conferred God stage to stand up in alarm, too. They all looked towards the west in astonishment. The eternal Heaven God Emperor moved his palms and removed the restrictions. In the next instant, the violent wind suddenly reversed directions to reveal a large, tall man walking slowly toward them. The air stilled immediately, and the world turned dim. It was as if silence had suddenly descended upon the entire world. Every Star Realm expert had cocked their heads upwards to look at this newcomer before they realized it. He was 8 feet tall and extremely handsome. His eyebrows were like swords, and every line and pattern on his face were incredibly imposing. His eyes shone like the bright sun itself, a divine light that seemed to have circulated for an infinity of time. An unprecedented feeling of inferiority and pettiness grew in every person's hearts. There were countless experts in the eastern divine regions, and the strongest experts of the upper star realms were powerful enough to be fearless even in face of a god emperor or a king realm. But when this man had appeared on the sky, they all suddenly felt like lowly commoners capitulating before a mighty monarch. They had never felt something like this even when they were facing the Brahma Heaven God Emperor and the Eternal Heaven God Emperor. "It has been a long time, everyone. Forgive me for arriving uninvited," said the Dragon Monarch with a smile on his face. His words were unusually gentle, but they rammed into one's heart and soul like they were a heavenly decree, reverberating for a long time before gradually dissipating. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor strode forward and clasped his hands together. "Eternal Heaven is infinitely honored to welcome the arrival of the Dragon Monarch. Your apology is entirely unnecessary." Everyone around him, the Brahma Heaven God Emperor, Star God Emperor, Moon God Emperor, and God Emperor Shishin, clasped their hands and bowed. Unlike the commotion that had broken out during Kang Shishin's arrival, the conferred God stage was dead silent when the name, Dragon Monarch, had appeared. No one could describe the shock in their own hearts. The Dragon Monarch was such a being that he was the ruler of the Dragon God realm, the greatest king realm to exist in the Western divine region. He was the greatest cultivator in all divine realms, no, in the entire Primal Chaos realm, bar none. The Dragon God realm he ruled was the absolute king of all realms in the Primal Chaos realm. The Western divine region he resided in was also the strongest of all 4 divine regions. It was likely that this status couldn't be shaken even if the Eastern Divine Region and Southern Divine Region were to join hands. The reason the 5 God Emperors acted so respectfully in his presence wasn't just because the Dragon Monarch was absolutely powerful and divine. His seniority and experience far exceeded theirs, too. A human's lifespan couldn't really be considered long compared to all the races in existence. Even those who cultivated to the realm of Divine Master could only enjoy a maximum lifespan of around 50,000 years. For example, the Sword Sovereign Jun Wuming was currently the oldest and most senior human cultivator alive. As for the Dragon Monarch, he was currently 350,000 years old. He had lived longer than all 5 God Emperors combined. Dragons were gifted with impossibly strong bodies since birth, and they were literally the race with the greatest talent out of all the races. Humans were far inferior in comparison, not to mention that their lives were much shorter than a dragon's. This was why the Dragon God realm was the king of all God realms. At the same cultivation level, a human was absolutely no match for a dragon. This status quo remained the same even at the God Emperor level. The Brahma Heaven God Emperor and Eternal Heaven God Emperor might be all-powerful and mighty, but even they couldn't win a battle against the Dragon Monarch, the true dragon with 300,000 years of acquisition under his belt. That was why the Dragon Monarch was indisputably the greatest cultivator in the entire Primal Chaos. It was the absolute truth in everyone's minds. His arrival was the real arrival of a monarch. Alishu, Kang Shishin's name is his title. He would technically be called the Heaven Unleashed God Emperor / Unleashed Heaven God Emperor. But it would be weird if someone calls him that, and he refers to himself as Shishin. To avoid any discrepancies and confusion, I kept his title the same as his name. Stage bowed in courtesy. Personally having witnessed the Dragon Monarch after the gathering of the 4 God Emperors, their astonishment and excitement reached a height at which they almost felt like they could die with no regrets. No need to be so polite. The Dragon Monarch smiled, and the hand tucked beneath his sleeve lightly pressed downwards. Everyone present instantly felt a soft breeze press upon their bodies. Under this light wind, their bodies couldn't help but slowly sit back down in their seats. The crowd of experts felt endlessly shocked yet again. This move was hundreds of thousands of times harder than pressing down on others with brute force. The Dragon Monarch entered the eastern seating area and sat next to the Eternal Heaven God Emperor. This arrangement was only natural to those watching. The Dragon Monarch's arrival has given all of us a nice surprise. Is the Dragon Queen well? The Eternal Heaven God Emperor inquired. As well as ever. Thank you for your concern, Eternal Heaven God Emperor. Upon mentioning the Dragon Queen, a touch of softness that came from the heart emerged on a face that seemed to contain all the majesty in the world. It has been over 10,000 years since I was last able to meet with the Dragon Queen. If I could have the honor of both the Dragon Monarch and Queen arriving this time, one of the greatest wishes of my life would be fulfilled. The Dragon Monarch smiled. If Brother Eternal Heaven has the time, you may visit our Dragon God realm. My wife and I wholeheartedly welcome you. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor cheerfully replied, Eternal Heaven is absolutely honored to have received your words. Dragon Monarch. It seems like the Dragon Monarch is also rather interested in this time's great matter. If I haven't recalled wrongly, this is the first time you have actively made a visit to our eastern divine region. As the Brahma Heaven God Emperor said this, he faintly glanced at God Emperor Shishin. A bit of seriousness crept onto the Dragon Monarch's face. I have heard the rumors, but I didn't completely believe it until I heard that your profound God convention would be sending 1,000 young experts into the Eternal Heaven Pearl for an unprecedented level of cultivation for the next 3,000 years. The Dragon Monarch stared intently at the Eternal Heaven Divine Emperor. The Eternal Heaven Pearl's power may be almost infinite, but if it was forced to compress 3,000 years into 3 while still maintaining the spirit energy inside the Eternal Heaven Divine Realm, I doubt that it would have much power left, if at all. It would take God knows how many years for it to recover. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor didn't deny this. He nodded slowly while answering, You are truly knowledgeable, Dragon Monarch. That is true. Not only did the Eternal Heaven Divine Realm make an all-or-nothing gamble using the power of the Eternal Heaven Pearl, you even granted the opportunity to outsiders as well. This would never have happened if you had any better choices to choose from, so how could I possibly ignore this action you've taken? I am certain God Emperor Shishin shares the same thought as I. Kang Shishin nodded as blue-gold light flashed through his pupils. That is correct. Can you give us an answer, Eternal Heaven God Emperor? It is good that you've both showed up. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor suddenly sighed quietly. After all, the Eastern Divine Region won't be the only region that is affected if it were to really happen. If we lost control, it may very well affect the Western Divine Region and Southern Divine Region too. Oh! Both the Dragon Monarch and God Emperor Shishin looked surprised by his claims. Everyone on the God-conferred stage was listening intently as well. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor looked sidewards towards the 3 heavenly mystery elders who had stayed silent all this time and said, Master Mo Yu, Master Mo Wen, Master Mo Zhai. Please, it was only then that the 3 heavenly mystery elders opened their muddled eyes. They nodded in unison before flying straight to the center of the God-conferred stage. They hovered above the stage in a triangular formation. I am Mo Yu. I thank you all for attending this meeting despite the distance you had to travel. Master Mo Yu's hair was white, and his eyes were clouded. He might look like an immortal still, but his voice obviously sounded withered and weak. His life's flame looked like it might extinguish at any moment. Everyone knew that the 3 elders of heavenly mystery had drastically shortened their lifespans to look into the future some years ago. They had no doubt that the important matter that they were about to discuss now had everything to do with the 3 elders rebelling against heaven's way and peeking into the future, even at the cost of most of their lifespans. The closure of the heavenly mystery realm just before the profound God convention might very well be in preparation for this day as well. We wouldn't dare disturb your peace and summon everyone to this place if it wasn't for a matter of utmost importance. Cough, cough, cough. Mo coughed dryly and painfully for a moment. What on earth is it, Master? The Holy Eve's Realm King stood up and asked seriously. At this point, everyone was starting to realize just how unusual this matter was. Master Mo turned around and nodded slightly. Mo Wen and Mo Zhai also nodded in unison before turning around. They waved their arms and conjured a profound formation in no time. Then a large screen spread open in midair. A profound imagery formation? What will it be? Many people muttered in soft voices. An image abruptly flickered onto the light screen, an image of darkness. It was darkness to mere mortals, but absolute emptiness to the countless experts present for this meeting. Everyone was staring firmly at the light screen. No one dared to look away for even an instant, even though it showed nothing but darkness. The empty darkness lasted for a very long time. Suddenly, a red light entered everyone's view. For some reason, everyone's hearts jumped the moment they saw the light. It was an incredibly deep red light that was redder than blood and sharper than sunlight. Worse, they felt an indescribable pressure pushing deeper into their hearts the longer they stared at the tiny red light. It was as if something was stabbing fiercely into their souls. What is this? The dragon monarch's eyebrows obviously sank lower. As you have all seen, Mo Yu's voice sounded as heavy as a bell as he spoke in front of the screen. This is the end of the Primal Chaos. You may also call it the edge of the Primal Chaos. What? The edge of the Primal Chaos? Everyone on the God-conferred stage was shocked when he said this, including the Dragon Monarch and Kang Shishan. It was common sense that the Primal Chaos was infinitely vast. They could live for a myriad lifetimes and never reach the edge of the Primal Chaos. However, common sense was different among the denizens of the God realm. It was because many ancient scriptures during the era of gods had mentioned the edge of the Primal Chaos. They all referred to the edge of the Primal Chaos as the Wall of Primal Chaos. However, the Primal Chaos was just too huge. It encompassed an innumerable amount of star realms and an unimaginable amount of space. Even in the God realm, those who wish to reach the edge of the Primal Chaos must be from an upper star realm or above. No star realms below this level could bear the burden otherwise. If that is the edge of the Primal Chaos, then what is that red light? Kang Shishan asked. The image on the screen wasn't standing still. It was rapidly approaching the red light. The darkness was enlarged to infinity, but the red light barely changed at all. It was a while later before some people realized that it wasn't a dotted red light after all. It was an extremely tiny line-shaped red light. Mo Yu continued, 20 years ago, the three of us were struck by a sudden and indescribable sense of anxiety. The feeling ballooned each day and eventually grew to unprecedented levels. All three of us agreed that this was very unusual, so we worked together to peer into the future. This is what we got as a result. However, we still know nothing about this image at the time, and the sense of anxiety kept ballooning each day. In the end, we disobeyed our ancestors' warnings and exhausted both our lifespans and our powers to peer forcefully into the future. Finally, we learned that the image in the screen was the edge of the Primal Chaos. Even better, we learned that it was located at the farthest east of the Primal Chaos, the edge closest to the eastern divine region. This red light is something that has appeared on the wall of Primal Chaos. Mo Yu sounded absolutely burdened as he said this. If we are not mistaken, it looks like a crack in the wall. That's impossible, God Emperor Shishan immediately said. The wall of Primal Chaos is such an existence that the Dragon Monarch, no, even the primordial true gods wouldn't be able to harm it, even if they were to exhaust all of their strength. So how can there possibly be a so-called crack in the wall? That is true, the Dragon Monarch nodded knowingly. The wall of Primal Chaos is a dimensional wall that not even the primordial true gods were able to break. If we must pinpoint something that could harm the wall, it would be the three heavenly profound treasures. The heaven-punishing ancestral sword, the evil embryo myriad tribulation wheel, and the world piercer. God Emperor Shishan followed up on the conversation. But these three heavenly profound treasures vanished after the gods were destroyed. They may very well be lost forever. You can't possibly be telling me that all three treasures have reappeared in the world. That is big news. Still, we don't live in the era of gods. There is almost no primordial energy of primal chaos in this world, so even if the profound heaven treasures were to reappear in this world, They couldn't possibly be as powerful as they were in the past. Therefore, it became a subject of debate as to whether they were currently strong enough to even harm the wall of primal chaos. The eternal heaven pearl is the best example of this. In our primal chaos realm, its divine powers are just. Kang Shishin suddenly noticed that he might have stepped on some toes and quickly turned to face the eternal heaven god emperor. Shishin absolutely doesn't mean to offend the eternal heaven pearl. It's no bother. You are just speaking the truth. Still, if it was the reappearance of the three heavenly profound treasures, we would be celebrating this momentous occasion already. We wouldn't be as worried as we are now, would we? The eternal heaven god emperor sighed quietly. Have you all forgotten about something? The wall of primal chaos is an extremely high-level dimensional barrier. Even if it was damaged by the ancestral sword or the myriad tribulation wheel, it could quickly recover itself, just like any normal torn space. Everyone's eyebrows became furrowed before he could even finish. But for some inexplicable reason, this red mark never fades from the wall of primal chaos. That is why it is extremely worrying. The smile on God Emperor Shishin's face vanished. The dragon monarch pondered seriously for a very long time before saying, "Are you certain that that is the wall of primal chaos?" "We wouldn't have gathered everyone here today if we weren't," the Brahma heaven god emperor spoke up. After the three heavenly mystery elders had informed us about this, both the eternal heaven god emperor and I have personally gone to the edge of the primal chaos at great personal cost to confirm this. Dozens of years ago, the dragon monarch's expression finally changed again. "So you have seen it with your own eyes as well." It was one thing to watch the image provided by the three heavenly mystery elders, and another to witness reality with one's own eyes. After all, there was always the possibility that the three heavenly mystery elders were just deluding themselves. But the personal account of two god emperors, that had to be real. "That's right," the eternal heaven god emperor nodded slowly before continuing in a heavy voice. "The three masters' claims are so fantastic that even we found it hard to believe until we confirmed it with our own eyes. When the Brahma heaven god emperor and I reached the farthest east of the primal chaos, we saw the piercing red light despite still being millions of kilometers away from it. Everything we saw was as the three masters have told us. No, it is even more unsettling than that," the Brahma heaven god emperor said. "The red crack on the wall of chaos is so bizarre that I can swear that I've never seen such a thing in my life. To think that a single line could be seen millions of kilometers away. This is the profound image the eternal heaven god emperor and I recorded while we were at the wall of primal chaos." The Brahma heaven god emperor suddenly pushed outwards. In an instant, a crack about the height of a person appeared in the screen above the god-conferred stage. The entire conferred god stage suddenly became covered in crimson light. It was as if a blood downpour had just occurred not long ago. An inexplicable fear swelled in everyone's hearts as they stared at the red crack that looked like it was right above their heads, even though it was obviously just an image on the screen. They felt as if their souls had been pricked by a murder weapon, just like a venomous snake whose weak point was clutched. They shivered. "WWWA, what is this?" Mu Huanji cried involuntarily. "Does this thing really exist on the wall of primal chaos?" "The words of two god emperors cannot be false," Yen Juhai said. His pupils had shrunk while he stared at the red crack. This was just an image of the real thing. The Brahma heaven god emperor withdrew his arm, and the terrible, bloody light finally faded away from the world. Everyone relaxed and felt as if they'd just escaped a purgatory made of a sea of blood for some reason. Shock remained in their hearts for a very long time. "Since you've been there yourself, did you manage to find out how this strange red crack came to be?" The eternal heaven god emperor shook his head. "No, we didn't. However, the two of us stayed in front of the wall of primal chaos for a whole year, and we didn't find anything except the usual spatial storms. However, that red crack is gradually expanding." The dragon monarch was speechless. "When the eternal heaven god emperor and I first reached the wall of primal chaos, the red crack was only about 7 feet long," the Brahma heaven god emperor said. "A year later, it has grown to 10 feet. As a result, both the eternal heaven god emperor and I had no choice but to consider a terrifying possibility. This red crack was not the result of a power in the primal chaos. It was either a natural part of the wall, or something foreign from beyond the primal chaos." God Emperor were world-shocking, without a shadow of a doubt. Outside the primal chaos, how is that possible? Wasn't it a dead world outside the primal chaos? There shouldn't be any doubt that even the ancient devil gods must have died after being banished outside the Primal Chaos. So how could there be a thing that broke the wall of the Primal Chaos? No matter how you think about it, it's certainly impossible. Perhaps the wall of Primal Chaos collapsed on its own. That would be even more impossible, right? It's truly inconceivable and something beyond the understanding of us, Mu Huanji said with eyes opened wide. No matter how I process it in my mind, it still sounds like nonsense, Hugh Ruli said with a frown. But looking at his face, he really didn't appear to truly mean what he had said. The 4 god emperors were all here, the dragon monarch had also come, and the 2 great god emperors of eternal heaven and heavenly Brahma had personally mentioned it. Therefore, no matter how inconceivable it was, there was no way for it to be said in jest. Even the elders of the god realm were all listening to their words as if they were from the heavenly book, let alone those young, profound practitioners who had come along with them. Ha 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 ha, God Emperor Shishin laughed loudly in an unrestrained voice. How could such a thing happen outside the Primal Chaos? Do you even believe what you have just told us yourselves? Dragon Monarch didn't laugh or anything, and instead lowered his eyes as he pondered something. He said all of a sudden, Brahma Heaven God Emperor, those words of yours are absolutely impossible if we were to think normally. However, considering that you said them publicly, could there be still some other reason? I will talk about it, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor said. Everyone, do you remember that in some books and jade strips from the primordial era of gods, there is mention of the head of the 4 great creation gods, Moe splitting open the wall of primal chaos with a heaven-punishing ancestral sword to banish all devil gods outside of it. Below the conferred god stage, a large number of people nodded their heads. It was an ancient legend which people from a lot of star realms, and especially many of those from the upper star realms, were already aware of. Over these past years, I once again consulted a large number of ancient texts that were left behind from the era of gods, and finally ascertained the authenticity of this matter. The location of the wall of primal chaos that was split open by creation god Moe with the heaven-punishing ancestral sword was right at the far east of the primal chaos. The atmosphere of the place suddenly became stiff. Dragon Monarch said, "You mean, it is perhaps not a coincidence after all. There is a possibility that the place of this crimson crack is precisely the location where the wall of primal chaos was split open by creation, god Moe with the heaven-punishing ancestral sword in the ancient era. The heaven-punishing ancestral sword is the highest-level existence within the bounds of the primal chaos, and possesses the most extreme energy of all too. It could easily slaughter even great powerful beings like true gods and true devils. Furthermore, it even blew open the wall of primal chaos with a single attack. The terrifying nature of its energy is definitely way beyond the limits of our comprehension. Given its unimaginable might, isn't it possible that after the wall of primal chaos recovered from the damage of being blown open by the heaven-punishing ancestral sword and closed once again, there still existed the remnant supreme divine power of the ancestral sword? As countless years passed, the divine power continuously damaged that place in the wall of primal chaos, which has now resulted in the wall of primal chaos eventually being unable to keep itself in the right state, and hence, the crack appeared on it. All the people held their breaths as they stared at each other without uttering a word. A lot of people were aware of the wall of primal chaos, but there was hardly anyone who had seen it with their own eyes, much less understood its existence. There was no one who expected that the wall of primal chaos would become their topic of discussion today. The Dragon Monarch pondered long before saying, "This dragon will speak bluntly, although that doesn't sound absolutely impossible. It is indeed quite far-fetched. Sigh, that is certainly true, but there is no other explanation besides it." The Eternal Heaven God Emperor shook his head while sighing. Such a matter had never happened in the entire history of the God realm. Even God Emperors like them, who were the highest-level beings in the primal chaos, found it far beyond what they had known in their lives. At the conferred God stage, an old person slowly stood up. It was actually the white and gray-haired sword sovereign, Jun Wuming. Despite the fact that there were many experts of the Eastern Divine region gathered at this place, he still had an extremely high authority to speak. "Respected God Emperors, what consequences would we have to face if the crimson crack on the wall of primal chaos continues to extend further?" It was also the question that everyone was most concerned about. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor replied, "Although we can't say for sure if the situation continues as it is, it is likely that the wall of primal chaos will collapse. If it were to happen in such an unusual manner, it's quite possible that it wouldn't be able to repair itself any longer, which would mean. The voice of the eternal heaven god emperor paused for a bit, and became particularly heavy. According to the ancient records, the world outside the primal chaos is one with endless calamities. If the wall of primal chaos were to collapse, and a gap appears in it, the energy of those calamities will gush into our world. As a result, the star realms that are comparatively nearer to it will definitely be hit by the calamities, and if it continues for a longer period, the balance of climates and elements would likely be broken, which would lead to extremely ghastly, unthinkable consequences. After all, that energy of calamities has annihilated even mighty existences like true gods. A deep frightened look surfaced on the faces of all the experts of the Eastern Divine region. The glazed Light Realm King said, "If it's truly as you say, then around what time will this horrible calamity break out?" "No one knows," the Eternal Heaven God Emperor answered. "The three masters from the Heavenly Mystery Realm weren't able to find out about it, either. Perhaps we are only worrying over nothing, and the crimson crack on the wall of primal chaos will disappear on its own at some point in time. It is possible as well that it will take a very long time, several 100,000 or million years, for it to truly collapse. But at the same time, there is also the possibility that it will happen after several thousand or 100 years. In a few years, or even tomorrow. No one can really predict the time, just like how it is impossible for anyone to know the reason behind the appearance of the crimson crack on the wall of primal chaos. Everything we have said is nothing more than our conjecture. So you mean to say that this special session of the Profound God Convention is to make preparations for the calamity that we might be facing in the future? The Dragon Monarch asked. Hearing all the things so far, he had already understood the whole story and the reason for the many unusual movements of the Eternal Heaven God realm. Correct. The tone of voice of Eternal Heaven God Emperor grew incomparably serious. Although everything we talked about is just a guess and assumption, and the so-called calamity may never happen, once it truly breaks out, it would definitely be catastrophic for the Eastern Divine region without sufficient preparations in place. These three masters from the Heavenly Mystery Realm risked their lives and exchanged a large part of their life spans in exchange for the information. So how could it be treated lightly? Furthermore, since the time the three masters pried into the mystery of heaven, they have constantly felt uneasy, all day and night for around 20 years. It's absolutely not a good omen, and we must prepare ourselves for the worst. Over these years, the Brahma Monarch, Star God, Moon God, as well as my Eternal Heaven Realm, have all been preparing for the calamity. We are stocking up as many profound crystals and profound stones with spatial energy, so as to fix the wall of primal chaos when it collapses. But that wall is something that even the true gods were unable to destroy. Therefore, the amount of spatial energy needed to fix it will certainly be incomparably enormous. There is no way that the preparations of a year or two would be enough for the purpose. It would require several hundred years, or even several thousand years. So, if the calamity were to break out during this time period, then we can only have a large number of experts block the gap in turns with their powerful energies, until we have enough spatial energy to fix the wall or discover some other solution. This session of the Profound God Convention was held with this in mind. Making all the people with a mature cultivation in the profound way enter the Eternal Heaven Divine Realm to cultivate would not be able to make a big difference in their cultivations after 3,000 years. But if it is those young profound practitioners with extremely high talent and unlimited future, we will definitely get to see their cultivations soaring in the time period of 3,000 years in the Eternal Heaven Divine Realm. The 1,000 young profound practitioners who will be sent inside the Eternal Heaven Divine Realm after this Profound God Convention will all become an extremely huge energy that will quite likely save the Eastern Divine region if the calamity were to truly break out someday in the future. At this point in time, Eternal Heaven God Emperor and others had already completely said whatever was needed or they wanted to. All that remained was for the rulers and experts of the Eastern Divine region that were present at the conferred God stage to digest the information and explanations they heard, and accept them. If it all turns out to be a needless worry in the end, that would still mean the addition of 1,000 peerless experts to the Eastern Divine region. There are many gains but not a single harm in following this plan. Eternal Heaven God Emperor smiled faintly, Silence reigned on the entire conferred God stage as people showed different reactions to his words. Stunned, staring blankly, spacing out, heart beating wildly, disapproval. It has been rumored many years ago that for this session of the profound God convention to be held all of a sudden, there had to be some relation with a calamity that was likely to happen, which was discovered by the heavenly mystery realm. However, these rumors were in bits and pieces, and their source was unknown as well. There were extremely few people who treated it as the truth, who would have thought that not only was the rumor true, the reality of it was far beyond their knowledge and imaginations. A weird crack on the wall of Primal Chaos, a strange crimson light coming from it, a fearsome guess, and a frightening calamity. It was as if a terrifying nightmare had barged into their tranquil world. The entire place remained quiet for a long while, and the four great god emperors didn't say a word again. It was at this time that Jun Wuming let out a very long sigh and broke the silence. Even though everything is uncertain for now, if the Eastern Divine Region is truly in danger, we all will naturally go all out to protect it. We were facing such an anomaly, and were still totally oblivious to it, causing the eternal Heaven God Emperor to exhaust his thoughts and ingenuity for the sake of the Eastern Divine Region. Not only have the preparations been underway since a long time ago, this time even something as important as the power of the Eternal Heaven Pearl has been decided to be used up. Wuming can only express his great admiration for all the Eternal Heaven God Emperor has done. Having finished his words, Jun Wuming bowed to the other party with sincerity. These words of Jun Wuming's resonated with every person of the Eastern Divine Region. All of them stood up from their seats and deeply bowed towards Eternal Heaven God Emperor. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor got up as he raised his hand and sighed. "My Eternal Heaven is a king realm of the Eastern Divine Region. I only did what was expected of us. If that day truly comes, the safety of the Eastern Divine Region would still depend on you all." "Ha ha, that goes without saying. If the Eastern Divine Region is in danger, my Holy Eve's realm will do all in our capability without taking even a step backward." The moment Eternal Heaven God Emperor finished his words, a middle-aged man with his black beard reaching down to his abdomen spoke in a solemn tone. It was actually the Holy Eve's realm king, the biological father of Luo Changsheng. When the time comes, the glazed light realm will completely follow the arrangement of the Eternal Heaven God Emperor. Sitting in the seat adjacent to the Holy Eve's realm, a very good-looking man said in an indifferent tone. Similar to the Holy Eve's realm king, there was no one who wouldn't know of his great name, either, the glazed light realm king. "Shrouding Sky Realm will certainly do everything possible," the Shrouding Sky Realm king roared as well. "We will certainly give it our all." Since the three most powerful upper star realms had expressed their stance on the matter without the slightest hesitation, the other star realms naturally followed right after them. "Good," Eternal Heaven God Emperor said in an excited voice. Despite being the ruler of a king realm, he gave a deep bow to all. "Representing Eternal Heaven, I shall first thank everyone for their cooperation." Having remained silent for a long time, Dragon Monarch stood up at this time. He said with a solemn expression, "This matter is quite odd, so this dragon will also pay special attention to it. I might personally make a trip to the edge of the Primal Chaos. If something worrying truly happens in the future, my Dragon God realm will not look on with folded arms either." There was quite clearly another nuance to the words of Dragon Monarch. Only if something worrying happens would the Dragon God realm not look on with folded arms. That meant that no assistance would be provided before the calamity actually happened. For example, donating spatial profound crystals. Everything was only a guess, after all. Moreover, it was a barely believable guess in the opinion of Dragon Monarch. However, to have Dragon Monarch say such words was already a pleasant surprise for Eternal Heaven God Emperor. He bowed in thanks. "Now that we have got such a promise from Dragon Monarch, Eternal Heaven will be 100 times more at ease." "God Emperor Shishin, what is your opinion?" the Brahma Heaven God Emperor asked. God Emperor Shishin replied with an indistinct smile. "How could I dare to arbitrarily make a decision on something so great? Besides, if these words were spoken by someone else, I'd not have believed a single thing, but since the Eternal Heaven God Emperor himself spoke about it, I don't have any choice but to believe it as true. However, I only believe in the thing about the location of the crack and don't acknowledge your so-called guess at all." The wall of Primal Chaos cracked open on its own. "Haha, I've never heard of a joke as absurd as this." The Eternal Heaven God Emperor let out a faint laugh. It is certainly true that it's nothing more than a baseless and guessed assumption. I also hope that everything is as God Emperor said. But since the matter is related to the safety of the Eastern Divine Region, we have to take preventive measures, even if the odds of the calamity happening are just 1 in 10,000 or even 100 million. While speaking, the divine eyes of eternal heaven God Emperor were looking far into the distance, to the east. There was a clear sign of deep worry in the depths of his eyes. There was a fact that he hadn't mentioned. The ones constantly feeling uneasy were not only the 3 elders of heavenly mystery realm, but also the eternal Heaven Pearl. Heaven Pearl on the battlefield for the second round of the preliminaries of the Profound God Convention. Incomparably intense battles were being fought everywhere in this place, so as to be able to seize the qualifications to enter the eternal heaven divine realm. Even if it wasn't their projections in here and they couldn't revive, they would still not spare anything to achieve their goal, even if it meant risking their lives. Xianxia was the sole unusual one in this place, and maintained the same status from start to end. In the first round of preliminaries, he had slacked off for 30 days in the main city. Now when others were fighting each other with their lives on the line in the second round of preliminaries, as it would decide whether or not they would be able to enter the eternal heaven divine realm, he had still not exchanged blows with anyone and kept himself invisible from beginning to end. Thanks to the incredibly powerful invisibility ability of the moon-splitting cascade, no one was able to sense his presence the whole time, and so it was only natural that no one attacked him. The second round of preliminaries was only to last for the brief period of 3 days. Xianxia kept silently calculating the time that had passed, and some time later, the second round was already nearing its end. Xianxia willed the ranking list to appear before his eyes. Immediately, he was almost shocked out of his mind by the damn long 9-number soul orb count held by the one in first place. Although the duration and the number of participants in the second round of preliminaries were both less than the first, all the people who made it here were those who were ranked in the top 10 of their respective battle zones. Moreover, as they still possessed the soul orbs from the first round, the efficiency of soul orbs being robbed had increased by up to 100 times. The strong wantonly robbed from others. Every time they successfully hunted another person, their soul orbs would see a sharp increase. The mid- and low-level weaklings could only become their prey one by one. Not only was there no increase in their soul orbs, they instead continued to lose a lot of them again and again. With such special plundering rules set in place, the entire battlefield displayed 2 extremely cruel situations. The one in first place with over 100 million soul orbs was still none other than Luo Changsheng. However, Xianxia was not at all concerned about the ranks of others. He willed to first search for the rank of Poyun. He was at the 73rd place in the ranking list, which was hardly different from his rank in the first round. There were less than 4 hours left before the end of this preliminary round. At this point in time, so long as he doesn't suffer from bad luck all of a sudden, let alone the top 1,000, he could even be one of the top 100. Feeling instantly calm in his heart, he next looked for the ranking of Wu Gaik. Finally, his gaze fixed right at the 19th place in the list. Xianxia was shocked. What do you call true strength? This F-King thing right here is what it is. In the first competition, he was forcibly killed by him, which resulted in a great fall in his ranking. Therefore, it was quite surprising to see him make a such comeback into the top 20 with his own strength once again, and in the second round of preliminaries, which was even crueler than the first. Possessing more than 50 million soul orbs, his soul orb count was just under half of the one holding first place, Luo Changsheng. If he killed Wu Gaik, he could immediately obtain over 15 million soul orbs, adding them to the nearly 2 million soul orbs he already had. Let alone the top 1,000, he would be able to firmly make his way into the top 300. This Wu Gaik is simply the reincarnation of a man who has constantly done good for others in his previous 10 lives. Xianxia cried in his heart. He increased his speed as he flew over to the place that he had chosen to meet with Wu Gaik 3 days ago. If he could smoothly meet with Jasmine this time, Wu Gaik's contribution couldn't be ignored. Xianxia began to think about whether he should just hand over the 2 profound stones to him as repayment for his hard work. Having pondered hard for 3 breaths, he rejected the idea. He naturally needed to have a firm hold on such a good person. Perhaps he might turn out to be a big help in the future. While counting time on his fingers, Xianxia arrived at the place where he had found Wu Gaik 3 days ago. Looking far, far into the distance, Wu Geik was actually waiting for him there already. It was obvious that he was afraid of the image stored in the profound imagery stone. He was the son of the great realm king of divine martial realm, a true genius who could climb back to the top 20 ranking after being blackmailed by another person over and over again. He had a peerless identity, talent, and splendor, but it could all be completely destroyed as soon as Xianxia wished to do so. How could he not be afraid? How could he not submit to him obediently? He might not even dare to arrive later than the arranged time. After undoing his invisibility behind a huge rock, Xianxia walked over to Wu Geik at an unhurried pace. Wu Geik's face was pitch black, and his lips trembled intensely on catching sight of Xianxia. However, he didn't choose to curse him in anger and took the initiative to speak instead. "Hurry up and attack. Don't waste my time." As he had already vented his hatred for the other party over these 3 days, Wu Geik was a lot calmer at this moment. He knew very well that given the fact he couldn't bear to face the consequences of those images being exposed to others, he had no way to flee from the clutches of Xianxia. In order to eradicate the root of trouble forever, he could only wait for the time when he came out of the eternal heaven-divine realm. In this place, he had no other choice but to give in to other parties' demands. Besides, after experiencing it once, it was easier to accept such a thing the second time. He felt a bit less humiliated than before, too. Xianxia was even more uninterested in talking nonsense. His body flashed across the place as he arrived behind Wu Geik. At the same time, Wu Geik also retracted all the profound energy covering his body. He didn't turn around and said in an incomparably venomous voice with eyes like that of a venomous snake, "This will be the last time. If you dare to again make use of the profound imagery stone to threaten me, I will have a life and death struggle with you, if worst comes to worst. I'll only lose my standing and reputation, but in your case, it would be much worse than that. All the people related to you will die without a place for burial." Wu Geik's threats were worth nothing as far as Xianxia was concerned. He let out a snort and launched a palm attack towards Wu Geik without saying a single word to him. Boom, boom, Wu Geik once again split at the waist like a rotten tree. The upper half of his body fell to the ground, but he hadn't died yet. His face contorted in pain as he suddenly smiled with a sinister look. "Don't blame me for not warning you. Trash like you, advancing to the top 1,000, can only be reduced to a laughingstock. It can be no more than a dream for you to enter the eternal heaven-divine realm. You're going to be punished by the eternal heaven-divine realm. He. No need for you to worry about it." Xianxia didn't show any reaction to Wu Geik's words. He again launched a palm attack and shattered the upper half of Wu Geik's body into pieces. A white light flashed, and Wu Geik's corpse disappeared into it. The quantity of soul orbs in his possession suddenly saw a great increase as they directly reached the 15 million mark. His rank also skyrocketed, and from the bottom of the ranking list rushed straight into the front rows of the list, as it finally stopped increasing further at the 253rd place. Xianxia took a long breath in relief. A tranquil feeling in his heart instantly replaced all his uneasiness and indecisiveness. 2 times, he had used the same method twice in a row, with the same person, to obtain the qualification, with his lowly strength which was at the bottommost level in the entire battlefield. It was absolutely not what he had earned with his true strength, but what he had obtained by cheating. Given his nature, he really disdained and despised such base conduct, but in order to meet Jasmine, he didn't hesitate in the least. He might be at ease now, but he didn't relax his vigilance and quickly went into invisible state. There were still nearly 2 hours before the end of the preliminaries. As someone who was carrying so many soul orbs, he absolutely couldn't have anyone set their eyes on him. He first chose a direction to fly away, and then found a place that should be relatively safer. Xianxia sat down and holed up in there, quietly waiting for the second round of preliminaries to come to an end. The powerfulness of the moon-splitting cascade would thoroughly manifest when Xianxia used it. During these past 2 years, not only was he cultivating under the guidance of Mythic, but he was also using his own style to understand and realize the realm of invisibility, of the moon-splitting cascade that Mythic had passed on to him. The breakthroughs of profound arts and skills and the profound way are different from each other. The latter requires understanding and accumulation, while in order to achieve a breakthrough in the former, a moment of comprehension and realization would often turn out to be the key. Xianxia had already vaguely sensed that Master Mythic should also be able to execute the realm of invisibility. Now, even though she had never shown it. Time passed by, and the second round of preliminaries was about to end in a short while. It was at this time that two female figures suddenly appeared in Xianxia's line of sight. "Big sis, the end must be right around the corner. Do you still want to continue?" The voice was tender and crisp, soft and mild. It would make the listeners feel numbness in their whole bodies and yearn incomparably to take a look at the owner of the voice. "Of course I want to. There is only a very slight difference in soul orbs between Xianxia and me. If I were to relax for even a bit, I'd be outdone by her." It was quite a gentle voice, but contained a customary chilliness within it. Her words made Xianxia recall something all of a sudden, a very slight difference of soul orbs between Xianxia and her. Capable enough to manage to have a very slight lead on the successor of the Sword Sovereign, and was a woman. There could be only person with an identity matching that information. One of the four god children of the eastern region, Xianxia of the glazed light realm. Xianxia raised his eyes to look above, and indeed saw Xianxia flying over in the sky. Her blue clothes were fluttering, making her seem just like the inviolable goddess of lunar palace, exquisite and outstanding. At her side was actually the same 15-year-old girl in the black skirt, who possessed bewitching black pupils and had shocked Poyun earlier with her talent. "It's those two sisters," Xianxia mumbled inwardly. It was only natural for Xianxia to be on this battlefield. But Xianxia was taken aback to see that even the girl dressed in the black skirt had passed the first round of preliminaries and entered this battlefield. Although the girl had a talent that could be described as extremely fearsome, she was, after all, too young. To be able to cultivate up to the first level of divine spirit realm at her age could very well be described as unprecedented since the dawn of time, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration in the least. But in a competition where 50 million top-notch experts were participating, normally speaking, it should be impossible for her to make it into the top 10,000. Of course, it was even more impossible for him. Listening to the words of her elder sister, the girl nodded her head obediently. "All right. I'm really dragging down Big Sis here, otherwise Big Sis would be far, far ahead of that Sword Sovereign's successor." Hearing her words, Xianxia immediately understood a bit of what was going on. Could it be that this little girl with frighteningly high talent had relied on her elder sister to be able to enter the second round of the preliminaries? That did make sense. Who was Xianxia? One of the four god children of the eastern region. She was one of the biggest connections one could hope for on the entire battlefield. If she intended to take charge of having her younger sister pass the preliminaries, that could not be any simpler. That meant that the two sisters were assigned to the same battlefield in the first round, even though it was somewhat difficult to believe, as there were no less than 1,000 battlefields, and the probability of such a thing happening was too low to consider, judging from the fact that the girl in the black skirt had indeed entered the second battlefield. That should be the case. Thinking up to this point, Xianxia immediately found some balance within himself. So he was not the only one cheating here. Rather than a person like Xiao Mo who was just hanging around idly, without any desire to pursue something, this was what you could truly call a fellow comrade. However, the other party was the daughter of the glazed light realm king, as well as the younger sister of Fairy Yingyu. The two of them belonged to completely different worlds. Xianxia's gaze stayed on the girl for a very long time. Making use of the special ascertainment rule of the battlefield, he saw the name of the girl. Xianxia. This girl who appeared like a black spirit, surprisingly had a name that was stirring and had lasting appeal. Then, when Xianxia was about to shift his gaze away, he suddenly saw Xianxia slowly turning around, and her pupils sweeping over everything. Her eyes seemed like a dark night with starry lights flickering within them, and they finally stopped looking any further when they reached the place where Xianxia was. Xianxia's heart skipped a beat. "She don't tell me that she discovered me. No, that's impossible. It was only a coincidence." But that gaze of her was fixed on Xianxia and didn't shift away for a long while. "Meiyin, what is it?" Sensing the abnormality in her state, Xianxia also turned around as her spirit sense unleashed in an instant. Immediately, Xianxia felt a powerful mental force sweeping over to him. When it came into contact with the place he was located, it didn't stop moving further in the slightest, after which it was completely retrieved. It was very clear that Xianxia hadn't discovered his existence either, even when she released her divine consciousness. However, the gaze of Xianxia was still on him. Furthermore, it seemed as if she was looking straight into his eyes. What is going on here? Using both moon-splitting cascade and hidden flowing lighting together provided a perfect omnidirectional invisibility. Still not daring to believe in his heart that he had been discovered, Xianxia gave it his all to maintain his invisible state as he tried out moving to the right. While he was moving, Shui Meiyan's gaze also followed him like his shadow. No matter whether he moved to the left or right, she kept on looking straight into his eyes and even revealed a very faint smile. Judging from this action of hers, regardless of how inconceivable it seemed to him, Xianxia had no choice but to believe that Shui Meiyan was truly able to see him. How is this possible? Just how exactly did she discover me? Moreover, she had her back at him before she suddenly turned around. It meant that she could not only see him with her eyes, but she could even discover his presence with her spirit sense. Oh shit, Xianxia was first surprised, and then his heart sank down all of a sudden. He had 17 million soul orbs on him. Before the strength of these two sisters, he was simply a super fat lamb that they could slaughter whenever they wished to. If they wanted to kill him, he would absolutely not be able to run away from them. Her watery and tender lips lifted slightly, and on her immature face appeared a particularly charming and heart-enticing smile. It's nothing. I just thought of a very interesting person. She took her eyes off him and pulled her elder sister's hand. Big sis, let's go. A look of doubt flashed across the eyes of Shui Yingyu, but she didn't ask any further. Bringing Shui Meiyan along with her, she very soon flew far away. Far into the distance, Xianxia saw Shui Meiyan turn her head around all of a sudden. She sweetly smiled towards him and lightly opened and closed her tender lips. Beside his ear, the voice of a girl resounded that seemed to be coming from a dream world. Big brother Xianxia, try your best. Realm, Jasmine was silently looking at her reflection in the mirror. After inheriting the power of the heavenly slaughter star god, her age seemed to have been set. Even after so many years had passed, she still looked the same as when she first met Xianxia. Her exterior appearance looked like any 13 to 14-year-old girl. However, her blood-red eyes seemed to exude coldness and aloofness unbefitting of her apparent age. The blood red in her eyes, and her long hair that seemed as though it had been dyed in fresh blood, seemed to have become even more vivid. Anyone that met her gaze would feel their body turn ice cold, as though a sharp blade dyed in blood was pressing against their throat. The face in the mirror was so perfectly exquisite that it seemed near dreamlike. The 13 to 14-year-old face, however, did not give off any feeling of immaturity, but instead seemed extremely dangerous and even exuded a soul-stirring demonic sense. She silently faced herself in the mirror for a very long time. No one knew what it was that she was thinking about. Knock, knock. Suddenly, sounds of knocking resounded in the silent star god hall. The knocking only sounded twice, and it had been very soft. It was obvious that the person knocking was being wary. Following that, the voice of an elegant male could be heard. Royal sister, may I come? Scram. One ice-cold word without any feeling or any other sort of compromise. Royal sister, I am still after all your big brother. I have some important matters. This princess only has one elder brother and he's already dead. Her voice grew gravely cold and filled with killing intent. Do you want to die? With a bang, the person outside the hall seemed to stagger in shock. When his voice sounded again, it was now shivering slightly. Royal sister, you really like to joke around. Even before he had finished speaking, the speaker had already escaped far away in fear. The peace in the Star God Hall returned, but soon it was disrupted by the anxious voice of a young girl. Big sis! Big sis! The doors to the hall were being directly pushed open, and a young girl with starry eyes, dressed in a 7-colored dress, hastily ran in until she was in front of Jasmine. Within the entire Star God realm, there was only one person that dared to act so casually in the Star God realm. Princess Xianxia. Other than her, even the Star God realm king would not dare act that way. Compared to 2 years ago, Xianxia had not changed at all. Jasmine slightly frowned as she rarely saw her acting so anxiously. Xianxia, what happened? Xianxia held Jasmine's hand. Her milky white face looked slightly red and her voice appeared anxious. Big sis, the second round of the preliminaries for the Profound God Conference is about to end. After that, it will be the battles on the conferred God stage. I want to go watch. Will you go with me? Just this. Jasmine did not believe it as she stared at Xianxia's star-like eyes, which were obviously still hiding something. You can't possibly be interested in the Profound God Convention. What is it that you want to do? Given their strength, the Profound God Convention would be similar to a fight between infants. How could it possibly interest them? I just want to watch the Profound God Convention. After all, I have never seen it before, and neither has Big Sis. It's said to be amongst the strongest 1,000 of the Eastern Divine region. It must be exciting. Won't you go with me? Kejai pouted her lips, pulled on Jasmine's hand, and pleaded while acting cute. If you want to watch, then go yourself. Jasmine rejected her without hesitation. No, I want Big Sis to go with me. Big Sis, Kejai. Jasmine's gaze suddenly focused as her face turned stern. I've watched you grow up, you can't possibly lie to me. Just what do you want to do? Kejai bit her lips secretly as her voice turned weak. Just want to watch the profound God convention. If you don't reply honestly, don't even dream of me going with you. Jasmine turned her gaze away from Kejai without leaving any chance for compromise. Actually, Kejai knew from the start that she could not possibly lie to her sister. However, she also could not tell her the real reason. After all, she knew her sister's temperament as well as her sister knew hers. I also have my reason, but I cannot say. Big Sis, won't you just come with me, please, pleasey? Kejai's gaze blurred as though she was a pitiful kitten begging for food. Her emotions been rising and falling continuously these past few days. When the first round of the preliminaries for the Profound God Convention began, she had already found Xianxia's name using the star tablet. Snow Song Realm, Xianxia, first level of the Divine Tribulation Realm. At that time, although she was excited, she was not worried. After all, the first round would still last for a month. However, soon after, she suddenly found out that not all the people who attended the Profound God Convention would stay in the eternal Heaven God realm, and that people who were eliminated would be ejected. She knew that the situation had changed, and she had no choice but to change plans. She did not drag Jasmine to the eternal Heaven God realm, but had wanted to secretly go outside the eternal Heaven God realm after the first round to reprimand Xianxia before figuring out other ways. In the end, she had not managed to find him, but instead found Xianxia's name among the names of people participating in the second round. The people eliminated from the second round would similarly be ejected. The situation had not changed. However, just now, when it was less than 2 hours from the end of the second round, when she checked Xianxia's situation on the star tablet, he was actually within the first 300. She could not imagine how Xianxia had done it and only ran anxiously to Jasmine. Can't say. Jasmine frowned. Why can't you say? Haven't I continuously told you that no matter what happens in the future, you're not allowed to decide on matters yourself? Why are you still hiding something from me? Kejai was so scared that her heart pounded repeatedly and her voice instantly became meek. I did promise that I would listen to Big Sis, but this time is different. Once Big Sis is there, she will understand, so I can't say it now. No, you must say. Jasmine did not give any chance for compromise. Big Sis, Kejai lifted her face, just this once, please. After Big Sis came back, I have been listening to you constantly and have never made you angry. But this time, can Big Sis just listen to me this once, just this once? It's very important. As long as you promise me, I'll listen to everything you say from now on. Please, please. As she spoke, her starry eyes were already filled with pitiful tears. You just... Jasmine was confused as she rarely saw Kejai be so stubborn. She had just wanted to speak, but when she saw Kejai's pitiful begging state, her heart finally softened. All right, but I'll only allow you to be willful this once. You must assure me that from now on you will not hide anything from me. Amen. Kejai's starry eyes sparkled as she replied with unbridled joy. For Jasmine to treat Kejai so strictly, she definitely had her reasons. Because during all those years that she had not been in Star God realm, Kejai had actually accepted the heavenly wolf Star God's legacy. To others, being able to inherit a Star God's power was something that they did not even dare dream of. However, to Jasmine, this was a catastrophe that should never ever be accepted. This was also the biggest reason why she had to immediately return to Star God realm. Eternal Heaven God realm, after close to 3 days of discussion about the matters concerning Wall of Primal Chaos, an abnormal situation was still displayed above the conferred God stage. Judging by the time, the second round of preliminaries is about to come to an end. The gaze of the Eternal Heaven God Emperor turned towards the Eternal Heaven Tower. The 1,000 youths who pass the preliminaries will be sent here. These 1,000 youths are the 1,000 heaven-chosen children selected for this profound God convention. If any disasters happen in the future, they will undoubtedly be a massive assisting force. However, before the conclusion of the profound God convention, it is best to not let them know of this. What's most important for them now is that they do their best in displaying their abilities whilst enjoying the profound God convention. This also allows us to witness the abilities of the young generation, and so we won't have to suddenly lay on some heavy pressure. Everyone on the conferred God stage nodded, as they understood what he meant. Heaven-chosen children, God Emperor Shishin laughed weirdly. Then this king must carefully observe. I hope that you won't disappoint me too much. HMPH, don't pee your pants after being a frog in the well for too long. The star god emperor suddenly laughed coldly. Beneath the king realms, there was indeed one exceptional candidate among the young generation of the eastern divine region that gained the confidence of not only the star god emperor, but also the other god emperors. Then this emperor really can't wait for it. God Emperor Shishin gave a fake smile. Then the expression of the eternal heaven god emperor suddenly changed as he looked at the Brahma heaven god emperor with a faint smile. The Brahma heaven god emperor's gaze shifted sideways before he smiled wryly. My daughter does not know the etiquette and barged in herself. Thousand Leaves is ashamed and hopes you will only punish her lightly. Ha 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 ha. The eternal heaven god emperor let out rare cheerful laughter. Your daughter personally coming is something that this old one is happy about. I wouldn't bear to blame her. Sigh, having already barged in but yet only watching from afar and not paying her respects to her elders, this is really unbecoming. The Brahma heaven god emperor shook his head and laughed bitterly. Everyone heard the conversation between the two clearly, and instantly, countless heads turned. The daughter of the Brahma heaven god emperor, the legendary goddess, was here. However, immediately, they also heard Brahma heaven god emperor's bitter laugh. His word meant that although his divine daughter was here, she did not come to the conferred god stage, but instead watched from afar. That's good as well. The moon god emperor smiled. If our eastern divine region's goddess had really come over, I'm afraid all the males present would no longer be able to pay enough attention to enjoy the profound god convention, ho ho ho. Ha 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 ha. All the god emperors began to laugh, except the star god emperor. That's weird. Why would Yinger being interested in a mere profound god convention? The Brahma heaven god emperor thought to himself. Based on his understanding of his daughter, there was no reason why she would appear here. Above the skies of the eternal heaven god realm, above the clouds, a golden silhouette stood silently above the clouds. She was dressed in golden clothes which flowed with a dreamlike light. Although her clothes were only slightly tight, they complemented her curves nicely and were sufficient to drive any man crazy. Her long hair was an eye-catching gold, so long that it rested just above her perky bottom. If someone were to only look at her profile or back view from far away, no one would doubt that she was definitely an unparalleled beauty. Even when she was only silently standing there, the glare of the sun and the shine of the stars seemed to have faded quietly, as though they were afraid that her elegance would diminish. However, what was exceptionally regretful was that no one was lucky enough to look at her face. A golden mask shaped like phoenix wings covered her mysterious eyes. However, below the mask, her lips were tender and seemed as though they were cherry blossom petals glittering in light. Her neck was dreamily white and seemed to be covered in a powder made of snow. Nobody would dare believe that there would be such flawless jade-like skin existing in this world. In the god realm, extremely few people had the opportunity to see how she looked, and yet there was almost no one that did not know the fame of her beauty. The eastern region's Brahma monarch goddess, the Brahma heaven god emperor's only daughter, Thousand Leaves Shadow. Brahma monarch goddess, the sole daughter of the Brahma heaven god emperor, Xianxia Yinger. She had directly passed through the restriction of the eternal heaven realm and arrived outside the conferred god stage. Her gaze penetrated through the distant space as it fell on the stage. Obviously, she had come for this profound god convention, but she didn't have the intention to enter the conferred god stage to watch the battle. Instead, she was planning to stay away from others and watch the competition from a distance. At her side was an old person who seemed particularly aged. His height was no taller than around 6 feet, and he had a crooked body. Furthermore, his whole body was dried up like a corpse that had been exposed to sun in a desert. He was dressed in gray clothes that were clearly too baggy for his frame, and were so utterly worn out that they only barely served their purpose. The head of the old man was deeply lowered, making it impossible to look at his eyes. His aura appeared to be strangely turbid, and he didn't budge an inch, as if his entire body was rigid. Even his tattered gray robe was completely still, and didn't show any movement from the wind blowing past it. There were 2 young girls standing straight behind him. They were dressed in similar silvery soft armor. The girl on the right had a dainty physique with exquisite curves, while the one on the left was very well developed, with her breasts pushing out her silvery armor, which was moving up and down as she breathed in and out. The two girls had their beautiful necks bent forward, displaying a very respectful attitude. It seemed as if they didn't dare to even look straight at the back of Xianxia, as if she was some sort of deity. However, these two girls, who were acting so carefully and clearly only had identities of attendant maids, had such auras of the profound way emitting from them that they could absolutely strike terror in the hearts of countless realm kings who had entered the conferred god stage. "Looks like some uninvited people have come to the convention as guests," Xianxia said. Those alluring as nectar, tender and beautiful lips of hers spoke in an extremely indifferent, emotionless tone of voice. "One is the dragon monarch, and another Kang Shishin from the southern region," the crooked old man replied. His voice was such that it was incomparably hard to understand his words, making it hard to believe that it was a human being speaking. Xianxia slightly raised her golden eyebrows. "Even the dragon monarch has come. It appears that he is also here because of that so-called crack on the wall of Primal Chaos." "Does Miss want to go over and greet them?" the crooked old man asked. His body remained still even when he was speaking, so much so that he didn't seem to be speaking with his lips. "No need." Xianxia didn't hesitate in the least. "There is only one person in this world, my royal father, who deserves my bow in greeting. Uncle Gu, do you feel that it will be worthwhile to have made the trip here?" "Miss has the blessing of heaven," the old person called Uncle Gu answered in a hoarse voice. "Considering the time, it should start at any moment now," Xianxia mumbled, as her gaze was fixed on the conferred god stage. "Nine profound, exquisite body, no matter how well you conceal it, it'd be absolutely impossible to hide it from the eyes of Uncle Gu." Inside the Eternal Heaven Pearl, the second round of preliminaries of the Profound God Convention had finally come to an end. The voice of Eternal Heaven resounded right on time. "Young experts, the second round of preliminaries ends now. You all have already answered with your efforts the question of who are going to be those heaven-chosen children." The battlefield became still at this moment. All the profound powers disappeared instantly without a trace, including those of the profound practitioners who were fighting hard until a moment ago. They couldn't release the slightest bit of energy any longer, as if their profound veins had been emptied in a split second. The results of the second round of preliminaries had been completely determined in this instant. The battlefield had become quiet, and everyone was looking at the sky as they waited to learn their fates. Some were wild with joy, others calm and indifferent. There were also some who were wailing, or had even gone hysterical, especially the state of those who were ranked close to the top 1,000. Although their ranks were just a little bit lower than the people placed among the top 1,000, the difference in their fates was going to be worlds apart. A person ranked 1,000th, and another 1,001st. The former would get to enter the eternal heaven divine realm, and the latter had lost the opportunity to cultivate for 3,000 years in the divine realm. Not even the phrase, world of difference, would be enough to describe their present situation. Those who could not make it into the top 1,000 on this battlefield, you will be sent away, and your real bodies will be sent to the outside of the eternal heaven realm. Hopefully, this session of the Profound God Convention has helped your way of profound cultivation to have a bright future and unlimited possibilities. As white light descended from the sky and the voice of eternal heaven sounded, the projections of all the profound practitioners who had failed to enter the top 1,000 also disappeared, without exception. There were only 1,000 participants left on the now calm battlefield of the second round. Xianxia was among these 1,000 people. "Young geniuses, you have successfully proven yourselves with your true strength and will, and have become the heaven-chosen children of this Profound God Convention." The voice of eternal heaven raised a bit, as it grew even more ear-splitting and soul-shaking. "You have the qualifications to enter the eternal heaven divine realm. In that place, your life will be remolded, and you will also have the possibility of thoroughly changing your fate. But before that, you should not forget that your fight has still not ended. Next, your real bodies will be sent to the conferred God stage inside the eternal heaven God realm. At that place, we will have an even crueler third elimination round, as well as the final conferred God battle. Out of the 1,000 heaven-chosen children, only 32 will have the qualifications to participate in the conferred God battle. In the end, only 4 people will be able to obtain the conferred title of Godly One." Everyone was listening seriously, as if they were afraid of missing even a single word. It was only Xianxia who closed his eyes while letting out a long breath in relaxation. Finally, finally! He was not the least bit concerned about the third elimination battle or the conferred God battle. The phrase will be sent inside the eternal heaven God realm. was already enough as far as he was concerned. The ups and downs that I went through during this period were truly quite tough to deal with. Though with such an incomparably powerful stepping stone as Wu Geik at my disposal, it didn't really seem all that difficult to overcome them, huh? He was very well aware of the situation he was going to face after being sent to the conferred God stage in the eternal heaven realm. But he was not at all worried about it, and instead was getting impatient. Youngsters who will be ruling the divine eastern region in the future, go to the conferred God stage and continue your fight. Clank. As rays of light shone downwards, all the projections dissolved and disappeared little by little. At the conferred God stage in the eternal heaven realm, the eternal heaven God Emperor also stood up at this time. He said with a faint smile, "It seems that the final results are out now. Let us all welcome the 1,000 heaven-chosen children that have been personally selected by the eternal heaven pearl. Kui, you will be in charge of this third round of preliminaries and the final conferred God battle. Make sure to be fair and strict." A middle-aged man in black clothes got to his feet behind the eternal heaven God Emperor. He had a face that made others feel scared just by getting a glimpse of it. His brows were like cold swords, reaching right up to his temples, and his lips were thin and pursed tightly, giving off the impression that he had never smiled in his life. His facial features were distinct like a water chestnut, and every wrinkle on the skin of his face appeared as if it had been carved by a sword. His eyes were like that of a hungry hawk gliding in the sky, sharp and ice-cold. "Master, rest easy." Each and every word of his brief reply sounded as sharp as knife. The moment he got up, the chatter in the conferred God stage area immediately grew a lot quieter. Countless realm king-level individuals kept their mouths shut in extreme fear and didn't dare to say a word for a long while. "Honorable Kui will be the one in charge this time." Taken aback, Yan Juhai said in a low voice. "Honorable Kui," a Phoenix sect disciple muttered. Soon after, he suddenly thought of where he had heard this name and cried in surprise. "It's him, Honorable Kui the Adjudicator, the overall leader of the Adjudicators of the Eternal Heaven Realm. When it comes to fairness, strictness, and sensitivity to others' feelings, if he were to be called second in the Eastern Divine region in those aspects, no one would dare to be called the first," Hugh Ruli said in a low voice. "For such a person to be entrusted with the task of supervising the conferred God battle, it seems that the Eternal Heaven Realm truly considers this session of the Profound God Convention to be very important. That is natural. After all, it's related to the calamity that will likely break out in the future. They're not joking around here," Yan Juhai said. The name of Honorable Kui had absolutely no less reputation than the 4 great God Emperors, because he was the overall leader of the Adjudicators of the Eternal Heaven Realm. Over all these years of him leading the Adjudicators, he had punished numerous experts and star realms practicing the profound way. Once irrefutable proof of their evildoing was obtained, no matter who it was, or the place or star realm they came from, all would be given extremely severe punishment, without any kind of leniency or tolerance. His name, Kui, precisely carried the meaning of getting rid of the filth of the eastern region. Kui was actually not his real name. Rather, it was what he had decided to change his original name to after becoming the leader of Adjudicators. It was clear how firmly determined he was to carry out his role. He was revered by countless profound practitioners of the thousands of star realms. Those who carried the burden of sins would tremble just by hearing his name, regardless of their standing in the eastern region. The eternal heaven god realm, having unrivaled prestige in the eastern divine region, had a lot to do with the Adjudicators, and their leader, Kui. Why was the first profound imagery stone in Yun Chi's possession was able to make Wu Geik endure humiliation and obediently give in to his demand? Not to slaughter the wood spirits was one of the important rules in the eastern divine region. Once the contents of that profound imagery stone became public, and the Adjudicators came to know about it, even if the divine martial realm was an extremely strong upper star realm, it would still absolutely found itself in serious trouble. Perhaps, considering the current situation of the wood spirits who were still being hunted secretly, they might get quite severely punished as an example to others. As a while light shone, a huge spatial profound formation suddenly appeared at the center of the conferred God stage. Following the rotation of the profound formation, 1,000 auras belonging to young experts made their appearance at the same time. When the white light dispersed, the 1,000 heaven-chosen children, who had emerged victorious after fierce and hard fights, all appeared in front of the audience. Immediately, the conferred god stage became noisy, as most of the audience stood up uncontrollably. Since the second round of preliminaries started, they were participating in the discussion of the major event, and had no way to know the situation of the competition through the star tablets. In other words, they were the last ones to know the results of the second round. It was at this moment that they truly came to know whether any of their sons, daughters, or disciples became one of the heaven-chosen children. Very soon, loud laughs and wails resounded together across the conferred god stage. A large number of elders found it difficult to suppress their excitement seeing their later generation on the conferred god stage, and laughed aloud in joy. Ha 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 ha! Xianxia had immediately locked onto the aura of Poyun. Although he was absolutely confident in his heart about his disciple becoming one of the top 1,000, seeing it happening with his own eyes still excited him, and his face flushed red. His blood was boiling as he let out a loud roar without a care in the world. "My good Yuner, well done, truly well done. You're the pride of my Golden Crow sect as well as of the entire Flame God realm, ha 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 ha." While laughing loudly, Xianxia didn't realize that 2 streams of hot tears were running down his face. He was overjoyed to such an extent, because the success of Poyun wasn't only a matter of his ranking in the competition, and the glory of such an amazing achievement. It would even change the standing of the Golden Crow sect and the Flame God realm, as well as the future of the entire realm. Moreover, this person was his own disciple. Having obtained such a disciple, he could even die without any regrets. Everything he had paid and done for Poyun was really, really worth it. Sect Master Sect Master Yan, you have my congratulations. It seems that the heavens have truly shown care for your Flame God realm this time. Mu Huanji said to Xianxia and Yan Juhai. Although he was sincerely congratulating them, he was feeling quite a bit of jealousy in his heart. Just when he finished his words, his gaze fixed in a direction all of a sudden. Soon after, his old eyes widened greatly as if he was stabbed with a pin. It appeared like he had suddenly seen the most unbelievable scene in the world. Among the 1,000 heaven-chosen children, at the most difficult place to notice in the midst of the 1,000 people, he caught sight of a person who absolutely shouldn't have appeared over there. Yun, A. Th. Mu Huanji opened his mouth wide, but couldn't call out that name, no matter how hard he tried. He blinked his eyes over and over again a few times, however, he still didn't dare to believe what he was seeing at this moment. Yun Chi, Mu Bingyun got to her feet immediately. There was a deeply stunned expression on her snow-white face. She found his appearance here no less unbelievable than Mu Huanji. Xianxia also saw Yun Chi at this time. He widened his eyes as he suddenly stopped laughing crazily. After repeatedly ascertaining that his eyes weren't deceiving him, he opened his mouth and said while stammering, "WH, what is going on here?" The expression on the face of Mu Bingyun changed irregularly, and her chest moved up and down. If it was another sect, it would be undoubtedly a gargantuan pleasant surprise for them to have a disciple, from whom they didn't expect anything, actually make it into the ranks of the heaven-chosen children. But Mu Bingyun didn't feel the least bit of pleasantness, and was instead deeply shocked to see Yun Chi. Because given Yun Chi's strength, he should absolutely not be over there. Oh no! Having remained in a shocked state for a long time, Mu Bingyun's heart sank all of a sudden. It was certainly impossible for Yun Chi to pass the second round with his own strength, and it was the same for the first round too. In that case, the only explanation possible for him to appear here would be him using some sort of special means. In other words, cheating. But this place here was the eternal heaven God realm. The one standing before him was the chief adjudicator of eternal heaven, Honorable Kui. Considering Yun Chi's profound strength, the first level of divine tribulation, even a fool would not believe that he became one of the heaven-chosen children using his true strength. His action of cheating was clearly looking down upon the eternal heaven God realm, as well the heaven-chosen children who had a special mission to carry out. He would certainly be confronted with the indignation of the eternal heaven God realm, the people present at the conferred God stage, and all the other profound practitioners of the many star realms as well. Afterwards, not only would his qualification to participate any further in the competition be cancelled, but he would also definitely receive an incomparably severe and even cruel punishment. Although it was only a group of youngsters that were under 60 years old, the auras being emitted from them were powerful enough to make countless experts on the stage feel deeply amazed. So that person is Luo Changsheng? Gaze after gaze fell on a particularly outstanding youth who was standing before all. He was dressed in white clothes, and his outward appearance was young, seemingly no more than 17 or 18 years old. His fair and clear skin and rather feminine facial features added some delicateness to his refined and elegant bearing. At first glance, it made him look like a scholar who was frail, gentle, and easy to associate with. However, the indistinct smile hanging at the corner of his mouth, and the expression of indifference as if he was looking down upon everyone, made him completely unapproachable. This gentle and frail-looking person had in fact a name that was known by each and every person in the Eastern Divine region. Luo Changsheng, the strongest of the four god children of the Eastern region, the one holding first place in both the first and second rounds of preliminaries, and the person who was publicly recognized as #1 among the current young generation of the Eastern Divine region. Although the people of the Eastern Divine region had long heard of his name, if they hadn't seen it for themselves, perhaps no one would have thought that the #1 person of the young generation of the Eastern Divine region would actually have such a gentle and frail appearance. Looks like no one else but Luo Changsheng could be #1 for this session of the Profound God Convention. Of course, there is basically no suspense to it. It is said that Luo Changsheng has already cultivated up to the ultimate limit of the Divine Spirit realm and is only a little ways away from entering the Divine King realm. He only needed to wait for the right opportunity when he would have an even deeper realization of the profound way, and then he could be a profound practitioner of the Divine King realm. It is extremely likely that he will become the youngest Divine King in the history of the Eastern Divine region. The four god children of the Eastern region are indeed worthy of their great reputation. In the second round of preliminaries, it's again those four monopolizing the first four places. A large number of geniuses have emerged among those of the young generation, but the four god children of the Eastern region have absolute superiority over others once again. There is no doubt about the final achievement of Luo Changsheng in this convention, and there'd most likely be no one else besides him. Shui Yingyu from Glazed Light, Lu Lengchuan from Shrouding Sky, and Jun Zile, the Sword Sovereign's successor, who will eventually be the four to whom the title of God will be conferred this time on the Conferred God stage. Wait a moment. Look at that little girl beside Shui Yingyu. How could there be such a little girl here? First level of Divine Spirit Realm. The Realm King of a Middle Star realm looked on in daze as shock filled his face. His gaze was directed to a young girl in a black skirt, who appeared 13 or 14 years old. There was a black butterfly-shaped belt tied to her thin waist. Her clothes, age, profound strength, everything about her existence made her seem a misfit to be present among the people around her. Shui Meiyin, more and more gazes focused on this special girl, and then even Yun Qi looked at her. For a person of the first level of Divine Spirit Realm, it was equally impossible for them to enter the top 1,000 by relying on their strength. But he wasn't surprised at all because he had personally seen her moving about together with Shui Yingyu. She had obviously cheated. He was still feeling deeply puzzled in his heart. Why had she been able to discover him, despite him being in the invisible state? But the discussions related to Shui Yingyu on the Conferred God stage were heading in a very different direction than his thoughts. Shui Meiyin, 15 years old, she actually managed to enter the ranks of the top 1,000. Incredible, 15 years old, Divine Spirit Realm. Could it be that she is that rumored one of the Glazed Light Realm? It is impossible for another person like her to exist. In the current young generation of the Glazed Light Realm, not only do they have Shui Yingyu, but also an amazing little monster. But no matter how astonishing her talent is, with her cultivation right now, it is quite impossible for her to. If it was someone else, it would naturally be impossible. However, if that rumor is true, no, there is no need for if. For her to be standing here together with Shui Yingyu, it already proves that rumor to be true. Rumor. What rumor? In the last stage of divine tribulation, before experiencing the heavenly tribulation, a person defeated 3 people in the mid-stages of divine spirit realm from the same sect. A sect master of a sect outside the glazed light realm personally saw and talked about it. WHWHWH? What did you say? People shifted their gazes at the glazed light realm king who was present in the northern seating area. There was not the slightest hint of surprise on his face at seeing his 2 daughters appear on the conferred god stage. He only had a faint smile from start to finish, because this outcome was only natural. So there are 4 of them who are at the 10th level of divine spirit realm, and 3 of them are no more than 30 years old. The dragon monarch nodded in praise. The youngsters of this generation of the Eastern Divine Region are truly outstanding. My Western Divine Region lacks too much in comparison. It wasn't that the Dragon Monarch was being modest, because when it came to cultivation speed, the dragon race was inferior to the humans, and far inferior at that. But taking into consideration the physique, talent, and lifespan of dragons, even if the humans could grow at a very fast rate, they would have no superiority over true dragons. Haha, if they knew that they were praised by the Dragon Monarch, they would certainly see it as the honor of a lifetime, the eternal heaven god emperor said while smiling faintly. HMPH, Kang Shishin let out a very light grunt. His expression was a bit stiff, clearly showing that he wasn't really all that happy. If the four god children of the Eastern region were all close to 60 years old, he could completely accept them having such high levels of cultivation. However, among the four youngsters of the 10th level of Divine Spirit Realm, besides Lu Lengchuan, who was above 50 years old, the auras of the life force of the other three were actually only around 30 years old. It dealt a significant blow to Kang Shishin. Because in respects to cultivation rate alone, the youngsters of this generation of the Southern Divine Region were already proven to be inferior to the Eastern Divine Region. Besides these four, the auras of other youngsters were also astonishing, and far beyond his expectations. When these 1,000 top-notch geniuses entered the eternal heaven divine realm, and then came out 3 years later, there would be no doubt that the Eastern Divine Region would suddenly see the addition of a large group of experts, who would be considered top-notch even by the standards of the entire God realm. It would naturally result in the power of the Southern Divine Region becoming weaker compared to the Eastern Divine Region. He was, of course, in a bad mood. The gaze of the Dragon Monarch moved little by little as he observed the top 1,000. He was clearly looking at them quite seriously. Those he observed first were naturally the ones with the most powerful auras. After a moment, he nodded slowly. 3,000 years in the eternal heaven divine realm is worth much more than cultivating outside for 10,000 years. 3 years later, there will likely be at least 10 divine masters among these 1,000 extraordinarily talented youngsters. His voice paused for a bit, after which the Dragon Monarch shook his head as he corrected himself. No, if they were to stay in contact with that level of aura inside the eternal heaven divine realm for 3,000 years, there would be more than 10 divine masters. Even the emergence of 20 or 30 of them is possible. Otherwise, your eternal heaven would not have reached its current heights. Ha ha ha! The eternal heaven god emperor slowly stroked his beard as he smiled mysteriously. He didn't make any comment to the Dragon Monarch's words. It was only him under heaven who truly knew the meaning of staying 3,000 years in the eternal heaven divine realm. Even the Dragon Monarch, who had lived 350,000 years, didn't really know it either. It was the first time in history for such a thing to happen. Having maintained a balance with the eternal heaven pearl for a long time, he now had to make a difficult choice and an enormous sacrifice. In addition, several hundred divine sovereigns will emerge among them. Putting aside that calamity, which is just a guess, the Eastern Divine Region in 3 years will possibly, The voice of the Dragon Monarch abruptly came to a halt. His gaze moved all of a sudden, and fixed directly on that petite black figure. That excessively immature aura of life force, as well as that surprising aura of the profound strength in Divine Spirit Realm, caused this number one person in the mighty God Realm to intensely change his expression. So the rumor was actually true, the Dragon Monarch said in a low tone. Oh, could it be that the Dragon Monarch has heard of her? Following the gaze of the Dragon Monarch, the eternal heaven god emperor asked with a faint smile. The glazed light realm of the Eastern region was bestowed a girl by heaven, who inherently possesses variant veins and variant soul. She began cultivating at the age of 7, after which she entered the divine way when she was 10. By the time she turned 11 years old, she reached the divine soul realm, and then the divine tribulation realm when she was 13, and could fight undefeated with those from the divine spirit realm. This dragon only thought of it as a joke, but it seems now that even this dragon had quite a narrow view. Having experienced countless things over 350,000 years, the weight of every word had quite a narrow view, coming from the Dragon Monarch was too great to describe. It's certainly impossible to talk about this girl with common sense as the basis. Just 2 months ago, she once again succeeded in advancing to the next realm as she stepped into the divine spirit realm, which made all of us uncontrollably marvel at her talent. The eternal heaven god emperor said, The gaze of the dragon monarch was still on Xianxia. He had observed her for longer than the total time he spent on the 4 god children of the eastern region. The 4 people with the title of god children are indeed absolutely outstanding, but even combined, they are still not as good as this one girl. There couldn't be any higher evaluation of a person than this, but the eternal heaven god emperor didn't show any change in his expression. Instead, he nodded without the slightest hesitation. Eternal heaven deeply thinks so, too. Over the past few years, Eternal Heaven has personally gone to the glazed light realm more than once in order to receive this girl as his disciple. However, Eternal Heaven shook his head with some disappointment and much regret. For him, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor, to take the initiative to take on someone as his disciple was such an unimaginably wishful opportunity that no profound practitioner would dare to think of even in their 10,000 lifetimes. However, when he took the initiative to do so for the first time in his life, the result was, ha 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 ha, the dragon monarch laughed aloud. Now that would be strange if the glazed light realm agreed to give you such a bright pearl bestowed by heaven. If this dragon could get such a god-favored girl, even if the heavenly king were to come asking for her, this dragon too would absolutely not be willing to part with her even for a little while. That is definitely true, but it will still be a big regret in the life of Eternal Heaven. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor let out a bitter laugh. Every time the Eternal Heaven God Emperor, who existed at the summit of the Primal Chaos and commanded the highest prestige in the Eastern Divine Region, looked towards Xianxia, he would actually have an eager, longing look in his eyes. It's rare for even this dragon to be able to see such an exceptionally talented one. The dragon monarch sighed with sincerity. If a person with her aptitude doesn't come to a premature end, she will possibly be no less powerful than the guardians of your eternal heaven god realm. A king realm is able to become so precisely because of having a special inheritance method. That was the reason for the eternal heaven god realm to have a group of incomparably powerful guardians this whole time. The star god realm and the moon god realm both relied on inheritance, too. If a profound practitioner could reach the same heights by themselves in the profound way as the ones who receive inheritance, that absolutely would be an extremely terrifying matter. Once again, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor didn't deny his speculation and nodded his head in response. Being able to see this little girl with unprecedented talent is in itself worth this dragon making the trip here. Even a lot of envy could be sensed in the tone of the dragon monarch. I suppose that she should be the youngest one not only among the 1,000 heaven-chosen children, but also of all the participants in the profound God convention. The youngest one with the lowest profound strength, but suddenly, the voice of the dragon monarch seemed to have been cut off by something instantly. Soon after, his brows lowered a bit as his gaze fell on a person behind Xianxia. Yunqi, amidst the auras of all the divine spirit realm experts, the divine tribulation realm aura of Yunqi was thoroughly drowned. Furthermore, the eyes of everyone were drawn to the ones with particularly top-notch auras even among the 1,000 experts. As for Yunqi, unless someone paid special attention to him, it was almost not possible to sense the existence of his aura. The dragon monarch was just now marveling at the fact that Xianxia managed to make it into the ranks of the heaven-chosen children, despite being the youngest, and the one with the lowest profound strength. But he didn't expect to suddenly sense an aura that was merely in the divine tribulation realm, and the first level of the divine tribulation realm at that. The aura of the first level of divine tribulation realm was far more than out of place in the midst of the 1,000 heaven-chosen children at the conferred God stage. This discovery spread crazily among the people present at the place, just like a plague. The noise on the conferred God stage also became low all of a sudden at this time. Shock, bewilderment, and disbelief surfaced on the faces of more and more people. After a brief while, the gazes of all the people, literally, the gazes of all the people at the stage were on Yunqi without a single exception, including those of the other 999 heaven-chosen children on the conferred God stage. Poyun's whole body began to boil over. Those great individuals that were mythical existences were present before his eyes and looking closely at him. He felt an unprecedented level of excitement and was in no mood to pay attention to others. It was only just now that he discovered the familiar aura of Yunqi from some distance to his right. The two of them were separated by less than 10 people. The first reaction of Poyun was, undoubtedly, disbelief at what he was seeing. It wasn't only Poyun who noticed Xianxia. There was also another person who harbored deep hatred for him, Zile. Catching sight of Xianxia, she stared him blankly for 3 breaths. Impossible. How could he worm his way in here? What's happening here? How can there be someone among us who is only at the divine tribulation realm? Wait a moment. This person is... The eyes of Shui Yingyu stopped moving for a second as she suddenly recalled the time when she had seen him. Heh. If there was anyone who was not surprised at all besides Wu Gaik, it was only Shui Meiyan. Unlike the others, she had been sneakily looking at Xianxia from the very beginning. Now that he had become the focus of the entire conferred god stage, light circled around within her eyes too. Her tender face had a big smile on it. So the profound god convention can actually be such a fun event. This was bound to happen. Wu Gaik started to feel uneasy. Who is that person? What exactly is going on? The first level of the divine tribulation realm. No matter what, it's impossible to enter the ranks of the heaven-chosen children with such a cultivation right. Let alone the heaven-chosen children, it would be impossible to even pass the first round of preliminaries. Could it be that he used some sort of special means? Is there still a need to ask that? I didn't think that someone would dare cheat in the profound god convention. Furthermore, he forced his way into the top 1,000. Is he looking for death or what? How exactly did he pull it off? Who cares about his means? He is bound to die anyway. Some people began discussing the matter, and the rest stared at each other. Once they discovered this different kind of existence among the top 1,000, first surprise, and then disbelief surfaced in their eyes. Afterwards, the looks in their eyes turned into that of disdain and pity. It was an extremely tremendous achievement to be one of the top 1,000 at the Profound God Convention. For a person in the first level of divine tribulation realm to make it into the top 1,000 was so ridiculous that even a 3-year-old child wouldn't believe it. Cheating itself wasn't that bad, as no matter what means was employed. It was in itself a kind of ability to be able to cheat. They could have overlooked such a thing if the cheating was done to rise in the ranks, and not to dare to improperly become one of the top 1,000 in the overall ranking, which lead him to be clearly exposed to the eyes of the 4 great god emperors of the eastern divine region and countless realm kings of other star realms. It would be an understatement to say he was looking for death. He was simply stupid beyond imagination. In the eastern seating area of the conferred god stage, the expressions of the 4 great god emperors darkened. Even the eternal heaven god emperor, who was the most gentle and calm among them, had a frown on his face. He was just about to say something when a wanton, crazy laugh reached his ears. Ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha-ha. The upper half of God Emperor Kang Shishin's body was bent backward, as he laughed aloud while clapping. Interesting, so very interesting. A person with a meager, profound strength of the first level of the divine tribulation realm was actually able to make his way into the top 1,000 youngsters of the eastern divine region, huh? It has really broadened this king's horizons, ha-ha-ha-ha. There was no doubt that God Emperor Kang Shishin was ridiculing the eastern divine region with his loud laugh, which further darkened the expressions of the 4 great god emperors. Even a profound practitioner of the first level of the divine tribulation realm was able to enter the ranks of the top 1,000, which effectively pulled down the threshold to make it into the top 1,000 of the eastern divine region to the first level of the divine tribulation realm. How could they not be ridiculed? If it were to spread, there was no doubt the entire convention would become a gargantuan joke. Although the eternal heaven god emperor still had a calm face, there was clearly some heaviness in his tone. Kui, following his 2 indifferently uttered words, the whole place became quiet. Honorable Kui landed on the god-conferred stage from the sky above as he stood in front of all the heaven-chosen children without saying a word. His stateliness that seemed to be suppressing the heaven and earth made all profound practitioners feel a chilling sensation all of a sudden, as they kept quiet out of fear. His eyes moved a bit as his gaze, which appeared sharper than a sword forged with the standards of the divine way, fell straight on Xianxia. An indescribable chill made all the young profound practitioners beside Xianxia frightened in their hearts, and they swiftly and carefully distanced themselves from him. A wide space had opened in the midst of the 1,000 people, with Xianxia at its center. "You there, come out," Hui said. The tone of his voice was extremely indifferent. Although there was not the slightest profound strength emitting from him, a coercion swept down from some unknown place as it weighed down the bodies of others like extremely heavy iron plates. It caused all of these top-notch young experts to hold their breath, without exception. Originally, this should look very funny to others, allowing them to enjoy the misfortune of the other party and even vent their hatred for him. However, because of Honorable Kui's frightening fame, they were incomparably nervous and felt pity for Xianxia rather than despising or hating him. Because in front of Honorable Kui, no matter how great one's origin was, even if they were the illegitimate child of the Heavenly King, they would be done for. Without any sort of hesitation, Xianxia stepped forward, as he firmly stood in front of Honorable Kui and didn't say anything. He was standing with the Dragon Monarch, the 5 great God Emperors, and almost all the top-notch experts of the Eastern Divine region paying attention to him as well. At this moment, Xianxia had become the focus of the entire conferred God stage. Even Luo Changsheng was unable to have such a special honor. "What is your name? Where are you from?" Honorable Kui asked. There wasn't the slightest emotion in his tone. "Xianxia, from a lower realm," Xianxia replied calmly. The 4 words "from a lower realm" immediately caused some disturbance among the people present at the conferred God stage, as changes happened in the gazes of all. In the God realm, even the lower star realms, which were of the lowest level in the God realm, disdained the profound practitioners from the lower realm and viewed them as inferior existences. Even if Xianxia was the son of an upper star realm king, given the great sin he had committed in such circumstances, he was certainly going to suffer a punishment without any room for mercy. So if he was truly from the mere lower realm, there was no doubt that he would be punished without the slightest chance of being forgiven. "Brother, Yun," Poyun swayed a bit as his entire body felt uneasiness. However, he didn't dare to recklessly take any action or say something. WH, what should we do?" All the hairs on Mu Huange's body stood on end, and he was in an extremely panicked state. Xianxia was the direct disciple of Mu Xuanian. If something were to happen to him, they would have no explanations for Mu Xuanian when they returned to their star realm. Moreover, how could this matter be an issue for Xianxia alone? It was extremely likely that their Snow Song realm would also be implicated. This was, after all, the profound God convention, where all the 4 emperors, as well as the Dragon Monarch and God Emperor Shishin, had arrived. This boy is normally so astute, so how did his brain suddenly become full of shit? Hugh Ruli was also alarmed and restless with anxiety as he rained curses in fury. Oh, in the area allocated to the star god realm, the heavenly poison star god Moonflower, who had been fiddling with her fingers this whole time, and not showing the slightest interest in anything that happened, narrowed her eyes, as a light moan came from her sensual and seductive lips. "What is it?" Sitting beside her, the heavenly Aster star god Shenhu moved his gaze sideways to her. "It's nothing. I just suddenly thought of someone." The voice of Moonflower was lovely, soft, and sluggish, similar to a charming beauty speaking by a man's ear in a low tone. "I don't know who had such bad luck and a short life to actually be remembered by a female devil like you," the heavenly Aster god Shenhu said. "It's just a dead person now." Moonflower gently caressed and stroked her long and thin fingers that had too strong a fragrance of flowers coming from them. She narrowed her eyes. "This little brother who is seeking death not only looks like him, his name is the same as well. Isn't that quite interesting?" The face of Honorable Kui seemed even stiffer than fine iron, as if no expression would ever appear on it. But a wisp of strange light flashed through the depths of his pupils as he looked straight at Xianxia. It was not only the case with Honorable Kui. Slight change had happened in the gazes of the Dragon Monarch, Brahma Heaven God Emperor, Eternal Heaven God Emperor, Star God Emperor, and Moon God Emperor. Especially God Emperor Shishin, who had been laughing crazily for a long while, he revealed an expression of interest, because Xianxia was too calm, facing all the God Emperors and Realm Kings here while being in such a predicament, and with Honorable Kui being only 5 steps away in front of him. Much less an ordinary person. Even a Realm King who had committed a great sin would possibly be too terrified to even stand in a steady manner. However, Xianxia didn't move in the least as he stood without any changes in his expression. Even his aura was like still water where no waves surfaced. He was behaving simply like a bystander that had nothing to do with the matter at hand. No, he was even calmer than a bystander. His gaze was continuously drifting around. It wasn't due to being so utterly afraid that his gaze was wandering aimlessly. Instead, he was actually looking around him in a seemingly absent-minded state. Xianxia was certainly not afraid in the least. On the contrary, he was eager for such a thing to happen. However, he really wasn't as calm in his heart as he looked from the outside. At least his heart had been beating crazily this whole time, though not because of the punishment he was about to receive. Good. This is so good. In such a situation, Jasmine will definitely catch sight of me. Jasmine, where are you? You're definitely somewhere around here. Xianxia's gaze and spirit sense were swiftly searching for her. During the 8 years he and Jasmine had been together, it was absolutely not just them spending time from morning to night with each other, but also coexisting in the same body. He believed that if Jasmine was in his vicinity, he would surely be able to perceive her. All 4 great king realms had come to this profound god convention. An aura just like that of heavenly might was emitting from the eastern region, where the 4 great king realms were located. The star god realm was among them. But he was not able to perceive Jasmine's aura. He had already spent a good long while searching for her, but still couldn't find her. Has Jasmine not come? No. It's definitely because there are so many powerful auras mixed at this place that I'm not able to locate her in a short time. If she's here, she must have seen me by now. Xianxia's heart was filled with deep, earnest hope and nervousness. On the other side, far away in the sky above, the goddess of the Brahma monarch god realm took her gaze away, as she said in a flat and indifferent tone, "Such a pointless farce. Uncle Gu, have you discovered it?" The old person responded with a slight shake of his head. "None of them has what we are looking for, neither the many people present nor the 1,000 heaven-chosen children." Heaven-chosen children. HMPH? Kina Yinger lightly snorted in disdain. She didn't show any reaction to not be able to find what she had come for, as she hadn't expected much from the very beginning. "Miss," the old man in the gray clothes said all of a sudden, "a dangerous individual is drawing near from the east." "Oh, it's the heavenly slaughter star god and the heavenly wolf star god," Uncle Gu slowly said. "The heavenly slaughter star god harbors extremely intense hatred towards you. Adding to it her extreme nature, she will definitely attack you, even if this place here is the eternal heaven realm. Therefore, avoid her for the time being." The goddess of Brahma heaven god realm remained silent for a bit. "Forget it. It's already no use staying here anyway." But before her figure moved at all, she suddenly muttered in doubt, "That's strange. The heavenly wolf star god still has a childish nature, so it's somewhat understandable for her to come here. But why would the heavenly slaughter star god come to this place? Uncle Gu, you first leave with Fu and Xian. I suddenly feel like going over and seeing whether the heavenly slaughter star god has made any progress over the past few years." Kaianai Yinger's gaze turned to the east. The aura on her body slowly faded away, and as her golden long hair blew in the wind, an incomparable, beautiful, flittering light glimmered across her body. "The spirit sense of the heavenly slaughter star god is extremely sharp. Miss must make sure to be careful." Uncle Gu didn't stop her, because once Kaianai Yinger decided to do something, no one could convince her otherwise. Leaving a warning in the end, his aged and dried-up figure flashed through the sky, and after an instant, he was already rapidly flying away into the distance, along with the 2 maids in silver armor. The figure of Kaianai Yinger also became fainter little by little at this time, until it disappeared completely. At the same time, her aura disappeared as well, just like the perfect invisibility that moon-splitting cascade bestowed on Xianxia.